You're listening to the Two Tongues Podcast. And now your hosts, Kyle and Chris.
Buongiorno and welcome once again to the Two Tongues Podcast.
Mi scusi.
Miss Scusi indeed. How's it going?
What's going on, man?
It's hot. It's a beautiful day.
It is a beautiful day. We took the kids to the pool.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Going swimming?
We took them to the playground. Today's Father's Day. And there was a guy.
Father's Day.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
There was a guy at the playground, father. He had a 3-month-old or a 6-month-old kid strapped on his chest in one of those carriers. And then he had 2 toddlers with him and all boys. And there was no wife to be seen. He was out with his kids all by himself. And I thought, man, happy Father's Day, because that is not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
Not an easy thing to do.
Guys, deep in it.
Deep in it.
Yep.
Boy kids are the worst.
I hear that.
I mean, they misbehave. And
I thought that me and my brothers were pretty good, honestly.
yeah.
Thought we made my parents. I mean, out of all of us, I was definitely the most of a problem. And then probably my youngest brother and, my middle brother, he was pretty easy. But I think in general, we didn't really give my parents too much of a problem.
Yeah.
Like everyone, whenever we would go visit people's houses, everyone would talk about how polite we were, things like that. We were always pretty good kids.
Yeah, for sure.
Later in life, that's when I started, skipping school, doing drugs, things like that.
Yeah. Shame on
out
you.
of the house at night.
Shame on you, Kyle. I'm drinking a Christmas beer that is from, I don't know, probably bought it like in November last year.
Oh.
And it was in the very back of the fridge.
They keep well.
Yeah, so far so good. But I'm no more alcohol starting tomorrow, so I'm just drinking the fridge,
living it up.
The ancient beer, fridge beer.
Yeah.
All right.
So before we get started, everyone go ahead and click the like button for us. That would be great. We really appreciate it when you people do that. And did you notice that we got some comments on the last episode, but nobody knew drinking out of cups.
Oh, was there comments specifically about that?
No one. No, just no one.
Nobody answered the call.
Exactly.
Nobody answered the call.
No one came through.
Yeah.
It's a great video, drinking out of cups. You should look it up.
Yeah.
And if you do, tell us that you did.
Tell us that you did.
Hit the subscribe button, all that stuff. Ring the bell. Do all the things.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like a whole story behind that. But I think that was just a comedy sketch, right?
Fake, yeah.
Just a comedy sketch.
So it was a track from an album that this comedian and musician named Dan Deacon did, where he was watching TV. The TV was on mute, and he was just like kind of doing this absurd narration of what he saw on TV. And it was like a kind of like a parody on, I think it's Long Island. People from Long Island talk that way.
Yeah.
And a couple years later, another like video artist named Liam Lynch, I believe, did the Lizard video that came with it. And I had
no idea they were two different.
Two different people.
Yeah.
And the story was that it was a guy who took a bunch of acid and locked himself in a closet on accident.
That's what I heard.
And he was in the closet just like ranting, like saying a bunch of weird shit. But that was not true at all.
No.
That's an interesting like viral thing on the internet, that it had this story behind it that was not true at all. But the story had like a life of its own,
Absolutely.
Because that's what I heard. That's, it's not like sometimes you watch things on the internet and you'll find something out about it and you're like, oh, I didn't know that. It wasn't a part of your experience with it, but that was. Somebody told me, yeah, this guy's locked in a closet on acid.
And you believed it.
Mr. Balloon Hands.
Walk down me on my walkway, lead me to the building.
I love that video, man.
All right. So today, ladies and gentlemen, we planned on talking about another podcast. We've talked a bit.
Podcast about a
podcast, episode 2. So we had an episode a couple years ago called Podcast.
What was it about?
Which
podcast was that about? Do you remember?
No, it might have been Michael Malice, but I don't know.
Yeah. It's not the only, we talk about podcasts.
Yeah, we do. On here. So one of the things that, so Kyle's involved in the communities surrounding the Crucible, that channel, and Andrew Wilson, who runs it.
He's the boss.
He's the boss man. And you've been doing some some work on that podcast too. In terms of,
I've moderated 3 debates, I believe.
Very cool.
I'm been trying to drum up some other debates. Actually, this coming Wednesday, I'm going to have a guy on for a solo episode. His name is Proxinos, and we're going to talk about like media, things like that. He seems like a super interesting guy. I'm excited to talk to him.
Is he a Greek feller?
I don't think he's actually Greek. I think he's Michael Knowles always calls Canada America's evil top hat.
Okay.
And so he's from America's evil top hat.
Oh, he's one of those guys.
But he seems like a super interesting guy. He wants to do a debate on the Crucible, so I'm trying to get that set up.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah. But anyways.
Well, yeah, so just so for those people who don't follow the Crucible, there's a pretty high profile debate that happened a week or two ago.
Last Friday. Not this past Friday 2 days ago, but the Friday before that. I think. Yeah, I think so. I'm pretty sure.
And it was Andrew Wilson, the guy whose channel it is, the main fella,
yeah.
And the comedian Dave Smith, the Libertarian comedian Dave Smith.
Libertarian comedian Dave Smith, who has been maybe distancing himself a bit from at least the Libertarian Party.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I think honestly from libertarianism in general. I mean, he defended it pretty good pretty good, depending on what you mean by that.
Yeah.
He put up a good fight in defending it in this debate, but I am suspicious that he is. Look, there's a lot of good stuff that you can take from libertarianism. I'm not like shitting on the ideology completely. I think that's the truth about a lot of things. You know, over the journey of this podcast, we've talked about a lot of ideologies that I don't agree with, but I do think that there's valuable things that we can take from them. And I think that people like conservative people, like boomer conservatives who are like communism, Marxism, and they just discount it entirely. You're stupid and you're doing yourself a disservice. If there's anything of value that you can take from that, you should take it. And that's how I feel about libertarianism too. If there's something that you can use it.
I think that's smart. I think people have a difficult time with that, especially the more ideological you are, the more reluctant you are to accept anything from a conflicting ideology. And I learned that lesson on this podcast. Oh,
this is a new noise.
I learned that lesson on this podcast when we were talking about postmodernism.
Yeah.
I wanted to hate postmodernism, and I don't respect it in general, but I don't respect its conclusions, and I don't respect many of the important people in the movement. Mm-hmm. But I learned a tremendous amount, and a couple of the things that we learned in the postmodern episode are legit philosophical points. I mean, the whole idea about meaning being so slippery. Mm-hmm. That you have to contend with that's legit. And the idea that how important language is. I mean, man, there's like some really, really interesting points that the postmodernists were wrestling with that who else does?
I think that plays into this Andrew Wilson, Dave Smith debate a little bit.
It kind of does.
Just to clarify, I don't really like communism or Marxism that much, but if there's anything valuable in there, you should take it. That's the point. So this debate been set up for a while. Andrew debated. One of the debates that I moderated was this guy Jacob Winograd, who is a good dude. We are mutuals on X, as it were, and he is one of the libertarians. Him, Kyle Matovic, a lot of those type people. I like them. They have good heads on their shoulders. And like Jacob specifically is a Christian libertarian, and he thinks that libertarianism needs to like align itself with Christianity. And I think that's that's better than it not, because when it's not, you end up with Chase Oliver. So, you got a Zen pouch going in too, huh?
Yeah, I have a bootleg version of it. Right. But Mr. Joe Rogan says sometimes a little bit of nicotine helps
the juices.
Yeah,
flowing.
so let's try that. The dude that you just mentioned, Oliver,
Yeah,
is
Chase
that
Oliver.
that's the guy that they nominated?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna ask a dumb question, but listen, man, I don't have any more.
No such thing as a dumb question.
I don't have any more pride left. As well, that's probably too strong of a statement. I no longer care about looking or sounding stupid.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get over that. And sometimes I would avoid asking questions because it shines the light on my ignorance. And it's always been like a thing for me. Like I even professionally, it's like fucking kind of a thing I need to fight back against. When they were calling him Skittles.
Yeah. That's exactly what you think.
Okay.
Gay shit.
Okay. Okay. That's what I wanted to ask.
Kid shit. Things like that.
Oh.
Yeah.
And listen, man, I'm sorry. Before we get off, before we get into more of this Dave Smith and Andrew Wilson debate, Libertarian debate, and by the way, for those people who don't know Dave Smith, you should. He's been on Joe Rogan many times. He's got a huge
Dave's
audience.
Awesome.
Where was it going? There's a couple things about he brought up communism, and I just wanted to tell you, I was listening to something, can't remember what, and it was talking about. I was listening to it in the shower this morning. I always have a podcast going in the shower because
why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
Multitasking.
I don't do that, but
I do, man.
Yeah.
I'm always a little worried that one of my iPhone cameras is looking at my penis, but I just kind of turn the phone sideways and carry on living my life. So, where's it going with this? Listening in the shower. Oh, it was about Karl Marx.
Okay.
And somebody was talking about his personal history.
Yeah.
Like whoever wrote his biography would have all these facts that, most people with a general knowledge of communism or Karl Marx would never know. The kind of stuff that he wrote in a letter to somebody personal, or in this case, poems that he wrote when he was young. Mm-hmm. I did not know that Karl Marx was a failed poet.
Yeah.
The way Hitler was a failed painter. So that was kind of an interesting thing to learn. And when you read some of his poems, they're very dark.
Big surprise.
Yeah. And then I learned that Karl Marx got married and had a bunch of kids, and he was constantly borrowing money from his family. Not borrowing, getting handouts from his family.
Yeah, he got a lot of money from Engels too.
Yeah, dude. So you may know some of this. Yeah. So tell me if you do. But he eventually goes to his family and he asks for more money, and his family says, this isn't good for you. We're not going to give you any more money. But because you have 10 kids, we're going to give you our servant. We're going to let our servant come move in with you and help you out. And Karl Marx immediately impregnated her and then refused to acknowledge that it was his baby. And Friedrich Engels raised that kid.
Wow, I didn't know that part.
Yeah. Also, Karl Marx refused to bathe and suffered from all kinds of sores all over his body most of his life.
Yeah.
And they said that when he wrote Das Kapital, he had gnarly blisters on his penis. And he was in so much pain that you can tell by I haven't read Das Kapital, but if you read it, you can tell how angry he was when he was writing it because he was in so much pain while he was writing it.
Interesting.
So anyway, I learned that Karl Marx didn't acknowledge his kid. Basically rapes the servant and doesn't take responsibility for it, borrows money from his family. He's always wanting a handout his whole life. And then I'm like, listen, I am the first person to say that if you're going to try to fight back against the ideology, ad hominems are despicable. Don't attack the person, attack the argument, be noble and wrestle with the ideas. But the more I learned about Karl Marx as an individual,
you're like this dirty fucker, this dirty poor bastard.
Yeah, man, just looking for a handout. No wonder he wants the communist revolution. No wonder.
Old cocksore Carl. That's what we call him.
Cocksore Carl. So anyway, did you know all that stuff already?
I didn't know the part about the maid and not Engels raising that kid.
That's interesting. And that kid took Engels's name. Oh. And all of Karl Marx's kids died. Like a bunch of them died when they were young, and he was the one that survived. So the one that could have carried on his name doesn't even have his name.
Interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
All right. That's neither here nor there, but fuck Karl Marx and communism and the fucking horse they rode in on.
Yes, indeed.
All right.
So just before we start breaking down the debate, why don't you tell me just your general impression of it?
Okay. I thought that they struggled to get to any substantial points. I thought that they argued about semantics almost the entire time. It's like they couldn't get on the same page in terms of the definitions of words, and so they never got to anything substantial.
See, I'm going to let you keep going, but I don't think that.
I appreciate that.
I think that eventually and that we're going to watch a clip from it later, and I think that around the clip that I'm going to pull up, that's when things started to even out a little bit. But go ahead.
So sometimes I get a little
flustered.
I get a little enthusiastic, and I speak a little too strongly.
Yeah.
So when I said that they never get to anything substantial, I didn't really mean that. There was a couple of things that they talked about that I thought was important.
Yeah.
And towards the end, there was some really good stuff, I thought. But I do think it was like a lot of nonsense in the beginning for a while. Yeah. I thought, boy, man, I don't want to be critical of debates or of Andrew Wilson's style, because I've said a little bit of my piece on that, and I don't want to be critical. He seems like a nice guy. He seems like he and I would agree on a lot of things ideologically, and I think he and Dave Smith would agree on a lot of things ideologically. I also think they could have had an interesting conversation if they would have talked about what they agree on, and how they might be able to synthesize.
Boring.
But maybe you're right. It is maybe you're right. Maybe it doesn't make us good.
I don't think it's completely boring. I hope that Dave and Andrew do have conversations in the future. This conversation was almost just a conversation, not a debate. But Dave said that they could do whatever Andrew wanted, and Andrew's a debater.
Yeah.
So they had a debate.
That's one of the pieces. I took a little bit of a transcript on a part of it that I wanted to read through. And that's one of the points that I included in the transcript is is exactly that point where, and at one point Andrew's like, look, Dave, I asked you, we'll do whatever you want. Do you want to have a conversation or a debate? Because Dave Smith was complaining about the debate, about how it was going.
Yep.
And the thing is, I agree with Dave. But it's my personality, man.
Yeah.
And I get that. I understand that.
I don't agree with Dave. We're going to get into it, and we'll break it down. But yeah, I don't agree with Dave. So yeah.
What was your take, high level, on the whole conversation?
Well, I text you when it was happening.
Yeah.
And you weren't aware that it was going on, but I text you, and my text was something to the effect of, Andrew is crushing Dave Smith right now.
Yeah.
And I don't think that you necessarily saw it that way, but
I didn't see it that way.
Yeah, I did. I don't think that Dave had good responses for really anything that Andrew was saying.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm not saying that Dave Smith was doing this intentionally. I really don't. I don't think that Dave Smith was trying to be bad faith, which is a thing that people say a lot. Bad faith, good faith. But I don't think that Dave was trying to be, but I think that Dave was not answering the questions that Andrew was asking. He was trying to give answers. He was trying to kind of reframe things and give the answers that he wanted to.
Yep.
And a lot of what I think you have a problem with is Andrew keeping Dave on task, being like, that's not what I asked you. Answer the question that I asked you. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that.
No, and you're not wrong. But here's where I think it's an issue. I don't remember. Do you know that guy? Man, I hate doing this. There's a guy that's I've seen on the Crucible a couple times. He's been in some of those debates where they're talking about feminism, and they're talking about how to be a man, and what it means to be a man. He kind of looks he looks like somebody hit him in the head. You know what I mean?
I don't. Not off the top of my head.
He looks
like someone hit him in the head.
He looks like a retarded dude.
Damn.
That's what I didn't want to say. You made me say it, Kyle.
Well,
you
didn't really have to say that. I kind of assumed that's what you meant. I was picking up what you were putting.
He looks like somebody hit him in the head with a brick, and then he was like mostly okay, but not entirely. Anyway, I don't mean to say anything bad about him. I just when I remember him, that's what sticks in my head.
Damn.
So forgive me, that guy,
Whoever you are.
But in any case,
I really want to know who you're talking about.
I'll show you when we're done. I can. You'll probably know who it is. He's been a moderator, so he's been in the debates and he's been a moderator. If that helps you.
Damn.
In any case, I listened to him debate this guy, and at one point, the moderator had to step in and say, I know exactly
who it is.
You know what it is?
And yes, I know exactly who you're talking about. I think that a lot of Crucible people probably know who you're talking about.
Okay.
Too. He's not really in the Crucible world anymore. He kind of backstabbed Andrew.
Oh, so well then fuck him.
Yeah.
So
he does look retarded.
Yeah. In any case, he had a debate one time where the moderator stepped in and said, "Look, we're not getting anywhere." Because what the tactic he was doing was, I understand. He was like, let's define these terms. Let me get you to agree with A and B, and then you're fucked. Then the whole thing logically is going to funnel to my argument. So all I have to do is get you to agree to a couple of premises.
Yeah.
And then I'm just going to steamroll you the whole time.
Well, you got to be okay. So it's funny because the guy that looks like he got hit in the head with a brick is actually the guy that I debated and didn't do well against.
Was it the guy you did?
100%.
Oh
yeah.
Shit, maybe it was.
So,
but yeah,
we're talking about Alex from Playing with Fire.
Okay,
just let's put it out there.
Sorry, man. Sorry, Alex. I didn't mean it.
Yeah, whatever. I don't have any problem with Alex aside from the fact that I like Andrew, and I don't really appreciate what happened there.
Well, maybe it was your debate that I noticed that in.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, that is like, I'm not an experienced debater, and I kind of went into that debate like thinking of it more like a conversation.
Exactly.
And what I was going to say is when you were saying he gets you to agree to this and gets you to agree to this, and then you're fucked.
Yep.
And that was on me. I should have been a more effective debater.
Correct. But however, if you were having a conversation, not a debate, I think it could have been a more interesting back and forth. It could have been a more interesting exchange. Instead, it seems a little bit like a bullying tactic, which is something Dave Smith specifically says to Andrew. And the point is, the reason I make that comparison is because it seems to me like Alex learned it from Andrew. Andrew comes in and says, I want you to agree to this premise. Mm-hmm. And then he was just going to fucking steamroll him as soon as he did.
But that's the thing is,
and we're talking,
I was not as prepared as I should have been for that debate, which is on me, but it's due to lack of experience. I'm thinking about throwing my hat into the ring again, because the only way you get good at something is doing it.
That was going to be my next question to you. Yeah.
So I, hopefully I'll be able to develop that skill a little bit more, but Dave does a lot of debates, and Andrew, I don't know when we're going to start like breaking this shit down. Yeah. So I don't want to say too much, but the thing that Andrew was laying out there, the premise that he was giving Dave, is a premise that Dave agrees with, so it's not like he was, laying some trap. He was saying, Dave, is this what you believe? And Dave said, yes. And then Andrew was like, well, that's fucking stupid. Yeah. So,
well, listen, I do agree that Andrew got the better of Dave in a couple of key points, especially when Dave agrees at some point, okay, God spoke to me. Like, he's like, fine, I'm in your camp. God speaks to me. You remember that? Yeah. It was like he was completely giving up. Listen, I don't want to get too tied down in the details before we explain this to people and get in this, but just so you guys know, the debate between Andrew and Dave was sort of a philosophical debate or a moral debate. I don't know how you would frame it. It was Christian ethics versus libertarian ethics.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if you have anything else to add before.
Let's jump into it.
So I think because the point that I want to make in the beginning is what I see as problematic, or what rubs me the wrong way about the debate style in general.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't love it. It's not for me. I don't think it's just, and I admitted to you before the podcast that it's obviously a skill. It's a skill. It's an art. It's impressive for the people who can do it well, but I think it's not it's not the best way to learn about somebody's ideas and to learn from somebody. It's not the best way to do it.
Yeah, I think that it is, though. I don't know if it's the best.
Well, it's like if I'm not quick like Andrew, I'm going to lose.
Yeah.
But if we're having a conversation and you give me a fucking second to think, we can have some real. I can actually give you an intellectual.
Well, that's why
response.
you shouldn't do debates.
Yeah, agreed.
But Dave does debates.
Yeah,
Dave
true.
debates a lot. And Dave, when it's a topic that he has knowledge of and like the winning position on, like, so Dave just debated Chris Cuomo. You know Chris Cuomo?
I didn't see that, but I want to see
Dave
that.
Destroyed him.
Fucking A.
But it's hard not to be able to destroy someone on that because Chris Cuomo was wrong. Like, so Chris Cuomo could not have had a winning position on that. Now, if he was a really skilled debater, maybe he could have made a better case for his stupid positions. But, Chris Cuomo is wrong. So, but my point is that Dave is a good debater and he still got, in my opinion, I like Dave Smith. I have a ton of respect for Dave Smith.
Yep.
But Andrew fucked him up.
Yeah. I think there are moments when that's true. I think
it was true for most of it.
I think Dave wanted to have a different conversation. And
then Dave shouldn't have agreed to a debate.
Yeah. I think he probably agrees with that in hindsight.
Yeah.
So do you want to give like a high level, concise definition of Christian ethics and libertarian ethics? Do you want to try that?
I'm capable of that.
Well,
I'll do. We can do our best.
Yeah.
But Christian ethics, it's especially from Andrew's point of view, would be the morality laid forth in the Bible and in the church fathers afterwards.
Right, and the legitimacy of that is divine revelation,
divine command.
Right. Yeah.
And libertarian ethics, it's like. You said high level, and I like want to lean into mocking it. So that's not really high level, but it's hard not to mock, man. It's fucking silly. It's like honestly, it's kind of like satanic. It's like do what thou wilt. It is, man.
It's okay, but you have to add do what thou wilt, so long as you're not hurting anybody.
Yeah,
else.
But we were just talking about postmodernism earlier. And libertarian ethics like opens itself up to being manipulated by that kind of postmodern bullshit where it's like, okay, what does harm mean? So it's subjective. Yeah. And that's why I think that Christian ethics is superior because it's not.
Well, I think that is a compelling point that Andrew eventually makes. Mm-hmm. I think that happens best very, very close to the end. I thought he made his best.
I think it happens in the clip that I'm going to bring up. Okay.
So let me start with, again, I listened twice through it and I made a little bit of a transcription so I could try to show, I guess the general outline of the conversation. This is basically the first 20 minutes or so of the conversation. Mm-hmm. And so if it's not too terrible and you tell me if it is, I'll just try to read through it. And then we'll stop and talk about it as we go through. And then that literally, when that's over, there's only a couple minutes gap between what I want to talk about and where your clip.
It's really funny that you, because we found this out when we were texting about this episode earlier today. You said, I've got a transcript of like the first 20 or so minutes. And I was like, that's funny because what I want to show comes like right after that.
Interesting. Now, did you listen to all the Q&A? At the end?
Oh, I listened to the whole.
See, I didn't. I probably should have. Was that better, the Q&A portion?
Yeah, I think that you would have a different impression of how things went had you watched those.
Okay,
yeah.
I'll have to do that.
We'll talk about it later.
Okay,
let's just get.
All right, so
get started.
Here we go. Now, I wanted to ask you about Paleo-Conservatism, but in the interest of time, maybe we can save that till the end.
I'm not like a political. I have like a beginner's, what's the word I'm looking for?
A novice,
like a cursory, understanding of that stuff. So I'm not really the guy to talk to about that. But we can dig into it. Well, that could be future episodes.
Sure. Yeah. The reason, I could probably read some Pat Buchanan and we could talk. I don't know, but the reason I bring up Paleo-Conservative is because that's how Andrew refers to himself, the Paleo-Con. And so, from what I understand, fuck it. Let's just skip the Paleo-Con stuff. We'll get right into this.
All
So
right.
in the beginning of the debate, you have what you would generally expect. You have opening statements on both sides. So I'm just going to give you really quickly some of the things that Andrew opens with. First of all, he does compliment Dave immediately on the Andrew Cuomo debate. So it's clear that Andrew likes Dave, and there's some of that goodwill in the beginning, and I wanted to point that out because it gets a little nasty. So Andrew starts off.
I don't think it gets nasty, and I think that I think that more nastiness came from Dave. Honestly,
There were moments for sure.
The only thing that you could say is nasty from Andrew is Andrew holding Dave's feet to the fire and saying, "Answer the question I asked you," which is not.
Yeah. You're not totally wrong, but let me read this and you'll see. All right. So he compliments Dave's debate with Andrew Cuomo. He starts
Chris Cuomo.
Excuse me, Chris Cuomo. I put Andrew Cuomo in there like an asshole. Hold on, let me
you
fix
have
that.
to change it.
Anyway, he opens up talking about what libertarian philosophy is all about, and it basically surrounds, from Andrew's perspective, two concepts: the concept of self-ownership, that human beings own themselves, and that's going to become a very sticky point momentarily. And then also the non-aggression principle, and that goes back to what Kyle and I just said a moment ago, that libertarian philosophy basically says you can do whatever you want should be permitted, so long as you're not harming others.
Yeah.
You might say yourself or others, but whatever. The non-aggression principle.
If you can't harm yourself, do you own yourself?
See, this is where I think the postmodern semantic argument becomes difficult.
But it's important.
It's important. What you mean by ownership is important. What Dave was trying to say is he understands ownership to mean that which you exercise control over. And if there's anything at all you exercise control over, it's yourself. Now, does that mean you own yourself? You could use that word. You might choose a different word, and if you did, this whole conversation would be different.
Mm-hmm.
You might have called it, instead of ownership, you might have called it. Go ahead.
When I'm at work, I'm exercising control over my welder. I don't own my welder.
True.
My welding machine, whatever the fuck.
But if exercising control over something is on a spectrum, the highest end of that spectrum is your body, your will, yourself. Mm-hmm. So if that is what we mean by ownership, okay. See, we're already getting into it. So
we're going to get into it more. So
all right. Okay. He says, if people own themselves, no one has any basis for regulating other people's behavior, so long as that behavior is voluntary, right? I don't have a leg to stand on as a libertarian. If I say you're doing something voluntarily that's not harming anybody else, if I don't like it, if I don't think it's good for society, or I don't want it around my family, I still don't have a leg to stand on in that argument, because as long as I'm not hurting anyone else and it's voluntary, a libertarian should say there's no problem with it.
More power to you, brother. So
this is kind of the opening bit. And he says, we can't outlaw polygamy, incest, gay marriage, or unaliving. I don't know. Apparently, I can't use the S word. Allowing unrestrained voluntary behavior leads inevitably to mass degeneracy. And then I added, presumably, social instability. Mm-hmm. So Andrew's point is, if we let people do whatever they want, so long as they're not harming anybody else, people are going to do some outlandish shit. And if we just let that happen, it's going to go unchecked. And that's going to cause all kinds of problems, interpersonal problems, social problems. This is the argument. Mm-hmm. Is that fair? Fair? I'm summarizing Andrew's.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then he asks Dave whether the state should intervene to stop, to remove moral plagues, is the language that he uses. And he asks Dave to prove to him that he owns himself, because this is such an important part of the libertarian ethos. Mm-hmm. And then he asks Dave, what are the libertarian oughts? What ought to be allowed? And this is an interesting philosophical question. This goes back to David Hume, the ought versus is conversation. And it's something like this. Is there anything about the way the world is? Is there any knowledge that you can have about the way the world is that tells you anything at all about what you ought to do, or what ought to be allowed? What kind of behavior ought to be allowed? There's this huge gulf. Like, you could know everything. You could have all the knowledge in the world and know how the world functions. in intimate detail. And with that knowledge, can you say what you ought to do with your life? It's sort of a difficult question. And so Andrew's asking, as a libertarian, under that philosophy, is there some way for you to tell me what the oughts are? What ought you to do? What ought we allow? And that's kind of Andrew's opening statements.
I think it's worth mentioning that in his opening statements, Andrew says something to the effect of that when Dave is, has the screws put to him on these things, that he is evasive about them. And I think that plays out in this debate. I think that Dave was being evasive. I think that exactly what Andrew called out is exactly what happened.
Yep. And I think part of that is not willing, Dave not being willing to concede a point that he knew was going to be used against him. Mm-hmm. But I recognize that. All right. So then Dave has his opening remarks, and I just want you to pay attention to this. His first words are, "I'm just meeting you guys, and I didn't exactly know what I was in for." So whose fault is that? Yeah, true. But he makes it plain. He doesn't know what he's getting into. Maybe he's even a little taken aback by Andrew's opening statements. He's like, "Look, I'm not really sure how this was going to go."
Do you think that Andrew's opening statement was like
overly aggressive? I thought it was fair. I thought it was fair. But I don't think he quite understood what he was getting into.
Yeah.
And then he says this. He says, we'll have to get to that he's talking about the oughts when we're asking each other questions.
Yeah.
And to me, I think this is important because he thinks he's going to be asking questions and learning about Andrew's position, and Andrew's going to be asking questions and learning about his position. It seems to me that Dave thinks they're getting ready to have a conversation where they're trying to understand each other. And I don't think that's what Andrew is doing.
I think that, so, I mean, I have a hard time believing that Andrew pulled a fast one on Dave and is like, yeah, we're just going to have a conversation. And then he shows up and it's a moderated debate,
Yeah.
I think that Dave should have been more prepared, just as I should have been more prepared.
Fair.
And even if there was some kind of miscommunication, because like I said, I don't think Andrew's a very confident debater. He's good. So I don't think he needs to be sneaky, but if there was some kind of miscommunication and Dave just didn't understand, when he showed up and there's a moderator there, it's like, oh, okay, this is a debate. Yeah. So, I don't know. I just that doesn't tug on my heartstrings for Dave in the same way that it does you, apparently.
No. I appreciate that. Should Dave have listened to some Crucible debates and understood what he was getting into? Absolutely.
At the very least, he should have listened to the one that Dave did with his friend Jacob, the one that I moderated. I mean,
No, I agree.
And Dave has some kind of a little bit of knowledge about Andrew and what he does, because a little bit later on, when things are at the high water mark of being heated, he says something that lets you know that he's got some kind of inclination towards who Andrew is and what Andrew does.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
well, I guess the reason I bring those two statements up is because I think, I don't know, man. I just feel like this is people are going to be critical of this statement, but I'll just say, if I were Andrew and I heard Dave say that, it's like, well, I'm just meeting you guys right now. I really wasn't sure what I'm getting in for.
You'd then take your foot off the gas.
Absolutely. Bit. I would have readjusted. I would have readjusted. I would have.
Yeah. But again, I just don't think that Andrew was being, I just don't see Andrew as being that aggressive during this. Yes, he was saying, answer my question. Don't be evasive. I said that you would be. It's not like Andrew wasn't insulting Dave. Was he interjecting? Yes, 100%. Yeah. But that's the thing about debates is you can't just let a person gish gallop and say a bunch of shit. It's
I understood. Yeah. I mean, that's fair enough.
And if you're if it is a debate and you're asking someone a question and the person dances around your question and then tries to change the subject, that's a tactic that they're using.
True. Both were guilty of that in this debate. I will say.
Okay.
Both were guilty of moving the goalpost, changing the conversation. I noticed that a few times on both sides.
I can't think of a single time that Andrew did that.
There was a time when Dave specifically calls him out for it.
Yeah, but that's the thing, that when we get into this a little bit more, and this happens a lot when Andrew talks to libertarian, some of it, you know, like libertarianism, as much as libertarians don't want to admit it, is kind of like a lot of the ideology is kind of like the ethos that we live under. Like liberal people are kind of libertarians. Like, let me do what I want, man.
That was one of the best points that Andrew made.
And Dave, you know, Andrew would be making an argument, and Dave would not understand the argument that Andrew was making, and he was like, "Well, it's what you're asking doesn't make any sense." But it's like, yeah, if you know what Andrew's talking about, it makes complete sense.
Yeah, and so it's difficult to like harp on this without like people hearing it. But if Dave says, "I don't understand what the point you're making," and Andrew's response to that is to repeat verbatim what he said the last time, to me, it's like you're not even trying, man. It's like he's telling you he's confused. He doesn't know exactly what you're asking. If you're repeating the same question, just answer the question, Dave. Just answer the question. It's like, you know, it just seems a little bit unfair. It's just like,
I don't know, man. I don't know that it does, because it's like he's asking you a pretty simple question, you know?
Yeah, right. And Dave doesn't think it's a simple question. And the question is specifically about, do you own yourself? That's the question.
Well, it was about a few things. I mean, when they get into it happened a few times, you know, it was about the ownership, and then they get into, you know, the question of, you know, the incest.
The incest,
which
yeah.
Andrew does this thing where he'll talk about, you know, sex with animals. He'll talk about incest, things like that.
Yep.
And a lot of times these people that he's talking to, it's like, you know, well, I haven't really put a whole lot of thought into, you know. Yep. And it's like, well, he's not asking you if you're like personally okay with it. I think Andrew assumes that, you know, most people are kind of opposed to those things.
Right.
The question is, what in your moral philosophy, what in your worldview prevents you from doing that and gives you a justification for saying that other people should not be allowed to do that? It's not about whether you're okay with it. I mean, I guess it kind of is, like, tangentially.
Yeah.
But it's like, yes, okay, I get that you think that incest is wrong, but why? Why do you think it's wrong?
Yeah.
Which is what the whole divine command thing was about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just, to Dave's opening statement, he said, it's not a question of whether you should be allowed to do the things, but how society should treat them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So he's already kind of like stepping on his own argument. You know, it's like, it's not about whether you should be allowed to have sex with your sister.
Yeah.
You know, it's about how society should treat that. Well, what does that even mean? It's like, if you should be allowed to do it. So what he's saying, that you should be allowed to do it, but that society should like discourage it. Okay. Well, so how does society discourage things?
I think that's actually kind of a good question. And I because a libertarian philosophy is a political philosophy. So the question is, somebody who believes in liberty, like Dave does, it's not a question of, can you do it? Of course you can. Of course you can. Can you kill someone? Of course you can. Can you rape someone? Of course you can. Can you, whatever? Of course you can. You can do whatever the fuck you want. You're a living, breathing, you know, manifestation of the Creator. You go and do whatever you want. There's no one's going to stop you from expressing your will. It's just the way it is. The question is not about can you. The question is, what happens if it happens? What do we do then? If it happens, what is the state? What going to do?
I completely agree with you. And Dave completely contradicts himself.
Okay. Well, let's it's gonna take too long if we keep doing this. Let me just read. All right. So Dave makes a good point. He starts to make a point that I don't think they ever really get to. Because one of the things that Andrew says is, how do you regulate the behavior of others if it's degenerate behavior that even you as a libertarian don't want? How do you do that as a libertarian? Because Andrew doesn't think you can do anything. And Dave says property rights would regulate.
Andrew doesn't think you can do anything.
Well,
go ahead.
He doesn't think a libertarian can do anything about someone's voluntary
I see
behavior.
What you're saying.
So Dave says property rights would regulate the voluntary behavior of others.
So as long as you're in your own house, you can fuck your sister. That's not a problem.
Well, so I mean,
see, you like, and that's why Andrew brings those things up, because you're forced to defend awful, terrible things.
But the point is, this isn't a complete solution to the problem of regulating behavior. But Dave's point is, property rights is going to do some regulation, meaning you can't do the degenerate thing you want to do on my property. You can't do the degenerate things you want to do with my livestock, with my children, with my whatever it is, right?
Unless we're brothers, then you can't do it with my sister. But yeah.
So anyway, so he sort of makes that point. Okay. Then he says, the question to me isn't whether we ought, this is what you just said, whether we ought to be allowed to do them. And he's talking about degenerate behaviors. It's how society ought to treat them, and exactly what has led us to the point where these awful things are so celebrated.
Mm-hmm. Which the things that have brought us to where these awful things are so celebrated is this libertarian ethos in society, where it's like, as long as you're not hurting anyone else, man, who cares if you're butt fucking in public, you know? That's like, that's a thing that Dave like pushes. They didn't really get into it too much here. But that's something that Dave pushes back on. He's like, as you know, as we've become the biggest state in the history of the world, these degenerate things have become more celebrated. Yep. So it's like correlated. But the thing is, the state that we live in, you know, we were founded on the principles of liberty, and the difference is that the things we were at liberty to do early in this country, those things were moderated by a morality that we have completely thrown in the fucking hamper. That's you know? And now the government does protect your liberty to be a complete degen. Like the United States government of 2024, you know, you're not at liberty to do a lot of things. Yep. You know, your freedom of speech, if you want to say controversial things, they'll step on that right real fucking quick. Yep. They'll use corporations and, you know, debanking and things like that to silence people for sure. But if you want to, you know, dress in drag and, you know, do a drag strip show for kids, it's freedom, man. Yeah. That's freedom. Yeah. So I don't know. I just don't like, Dave's not making a good point. I just don't think he's it doesn't hold water for me.
Sure. So fair enough. The last point he makes here is, I think, also important. He says, I think there's a big misunderstanding of what exactly I stand for, and also what the tradition of resisting centralized control is all about. Mm-hmm. I'm happy to talk more about this. Yeah. So it seems to me like this is what Dave wants to talk about, mm-hmm. but they don't. They don't really. I mean, we'll get to some of it, but this is the conversation Dave wants to have. And I think he's kind of saying that, like, this is the conversation I want to have. Let's clear up what it is I believe, you know?
Yeah. I mean, in the debate that I lost to Alex, I had things that I wanted to talk about too. And it was on me for not being able to make those things happen.
Fair enough, man.
You know, there were a ton of things that I could have talked about that I would have fucked Alex up on, but I wasn't able to twist the conversation. I wasn't able to like steer the debate in that direction because of my lack of experience, you know?
Yeah.
So Alex, like, you know, he like gave me a septum piercing and then led me around by it.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
So I do think that there's a big misunderstanding of what exactly I stand for, as Dave stated, but I think the misunderstanding is on his part. He doesn't understand what he stands for. He thinks he does, but Andrew kicks the stool out from under him and is like, you're saying that this is what you stand for, but you don't even believe that when we get down, when I start to pick it apart.
Yeah.
And Dave did. I mean, Dave won't admit to it, I don't think, but he did. He like conceded to Andrew's divine command.
He did. Yeah. And
which props to Dave. I think that that's good. You know, I don't think that the end all be all should be do what you want as long as you're not hurting anyone. You know, I think that Dave admitted in this debate that you can't really come to objective morality unless you believe in God.
He did.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this question then. I think Dave was conceding in that way that you point out. I also think he was throwing Andrew a bone in terms of, we have this thing in common. I don't think Andrew threw Dave any bones. I don't think it was reciprocated until the end, until they were done with the debate. Then it was like, we can be friends again.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you think of that, but
I don't know. I don't think that. Did Andrew throw Dave any bones? So I don't think that a lot of the hostility in this debate, I don't really think came from Andrew. It came from Dave kvetching about, you're not treating me fairly. You're not letting me talk. Andrew was being direct.
Yep.
But he wasn't insulting. He wasn't like, you're dumb. This is, what you believe is stupid. He was just asking questions, and Dave was getting his panties in a bunch because he couldn't talk about what he wanted to talk about.
Yeah. I think there's some truth in that. I think the point you make about Dave having a responsibility, firstly, to know what he's getting into, and secondly, to be able to assert his will in the conversation so that he shares equally in the material and the course of the conversation. I think there's some truth in that. All right, let me start this opening bit. So this is the opening arguments are done. This is the back and forth. Andrew begins. This is about 25 minutes of the beginning of the debate. And Andrew says, ownership is a social construction. I own it because we agree that I own it. So he's saying that that's what ownership means. As a society, we agree that it belongs to me. And as long as we all agree, that's all ownership means. I'm not going to come steal it from you because I've agreed that it's yours. Okay. And he says, he asked Dave to demonstrate for him that he owns himself.
Yeah.
And Dave says, I didn't say it's not a social construction. And then Andrew says, well, then you don't own yourself. Dave's response is, that's a false binary. Hold on one second. And you can see Dave is trying to understand. He wants a minute. He's trying to understand what it is Andrew's asking him and to come up with a response. This is what I see in the debate. And Andrew interrupts him during this and says, no. It's a law of logic. You either do or you don't. And Dave says, no, I didn't say no. You're asking me if I do or if I don't. Do you own that guitar? So he just asks Andrew the question, and Andrew says yes. And he says, but you just said it's a social construct. I own myself as much as you own that guitar. If we look up ownership in the dictionary, the definition will be different from yours. Do I exercise control over myself? So this is Dave's definition of ownership. Yes, I think so. And that, I think, in order for us to have this conversation, we've both agreed to that principle. So in order for them to have a conversation, Dave's saying, even Andrew has to admit they couldn't have this conversation if they didn't at least agree that they own themselves, the arguments they're making, the words that are coming out of their mouths, they have control over that exclusively. And so I skip a little bit here. That's what those dots are about. And Andrew says, if we agree that ownership is a social construct, I could say you own yourself, but that doesn't mean anything. Let me explain why. What if we change the social construct and decide you can own a person? So now this is like a slavery context. He says, does that mean people no longer own themselves? Okay, so in the bold, there's my comment that I probably wouldn't be able to make on the spot, but after a minute of reflection, this is my comment. If it has to be voluntary, we couldn't decide to change the social construct, at least legitimately, meaning a slave would have to agree to be a slave, right? Under Dave's logic, it has to be voluntary. The social construct has to be, in a libertarian world, voluntary. So slavery couldn't happen unless a slave agrees to be a slave. Now, that's something that they didn't talk about, which I wish they would have. What are your thoughts there? Andrew's saying, well, if it's just a social construct, we could change it, can't we? And then if I say, let's go back to 1830, if I own slaves and that's the social construct, how can you say you own yourself if I fucking own you? What are your thoughts?
I think that in a practical sense, Andrew was right. It's like, in like theory, yes, if it's not voluntary, then the slave owner can't own the slave. But in practicality, I mean, he does own it,
Yeah. What comes to my mind right now is that be ungovernable meme. It's like, be ungovernable, right? It's like if the totalitarian government says, you know what, bitch, I own you, I say what goes, we still have the ability to be ungovernable, right?
You have the ability to attempt to be ungovernable.
You can, and you can die in the process, but then you're a free man when you die. You were never a slave.
Also a dead man.
You're not agreeing. You're not agreeing. It has to be voluntary. Or otherwise, the social construct isn't a social agreement. It needs to be an agreement. Under a libertarian philosophy, it needs to be an agreement. Otherwise, you're using force to facilitate that. And then how can you say it's a social construct? It's like a really bad look for democracy, by the way.
Well,
if majority rules and they can say that the social construct has changed by majority, then every minority is a slave forever. There's no hope for you, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can only speak for myself. I feel pretty comfortable that Andrew would agree that democracy is overrated. Democracy is,
yeah,
it's a bad look. A lot of stuff is a bad look for democracy. Democracy is kind of a bad look for democracy.
For sure.
And within Andrew's moral framework, slavery, who are the people who changed the way slavery operates in the world? It was Christians. Christianity laid out. Now, a lot of people say that Christianity doesn't rule out slavery, but Christianity does, without question, set up ethics for slavery. It's like, you can't treat your slaves poorly. You can't do this. You can't do that. So
yeah.
And now, as far as whether Christianity actually does say you can't have slaves, that would be something interesting to talk about, but I would need to be more well-informed.
Yeah, you and me both.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. All right, so Dave says, I would say ownership implies that you are justified in that claim. You're justified in the claim that you own something. So he's putting this caveat in here. It's not just about a social construct. It has to be justified, right? And Andrew says, how do you justify it? And Dave says, that's going to start a whole other debate around semantics about what justified means.
Yeah.
And Andrew says, well, semantics are important in a debate. Dave says, and this is the first red font. Dave says, okay, well, let's not do this tactic of interrupting every 2 seconds. Let me finish what I'm saying. And there was a lot of interrupting going on both sides. There was a lot of interrupting going on. So go ahead.
I just think you're right. Dave was acting like Andrew was the only one interrupting too. Like, he was being very sensitive about it. And again, I like Dave. I'm not, I don't want to be like too talking shit on him, but he was acting like he was being very sensitive and acting like Andrew was doing all the interrupting.
Yeah.
And Andrew was the only one being, big meanie head Andrew Wilson. But
there was a couple of moments when Dave started to interrupt and Andrew
let me finish.
And then you see Dave go, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Like,
and Dave should have been better at that. You got to be like active, and you have to insist that you be allowed to speak to somebody.
True. I do think,
and that's why there's a moderator there. And that's why Andrew is always insistent that there's a moderator there. Like, Andrew went on Lauren Chen's show and she was like, oh, we don't need a moderator. And he just completely fucking wiped the floor with her.
Yeah. Now, do you think it's respectful? Yeah, I kind of lost the train of thought there. Sorry. There's a point of contrast in terms of the respect I think Dave is offering to Andrew during the debate that Andrew's not offering to Dave, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, let me just keep going because this is going to take fucking forever if we do. All right. So Andrew says, is it a justified belief that you own yourself or isn't it? And Dave says, I think it is. And again, Andrew asked the same question. Then can you demonstrate it? Demonstrate for me that you own yourself. This is the whole beginning part of the conversation. It surrounds how important it is for libertarians, property rights and self-ownership. And he's just saying, can you prove it to me that you own yourself? Otherwise, it's a non-starter. How can we begin to have this conversation? So he asks him again, can you demonstrate it? And Dave says, what do you mean by that? Now this is an honest question. If somebody says, do you own yourself? I think most human beings would say yes. Most human beings in any part of the world, at any point in time, ever, You ask him, do you own yourself? If you own anything at all, certainly it's yourself.
I'm not sure that that's true.
Well, it's my opinion.
Yeah.
It seems obvious to me that if you own anything, it's yourself.
Yeah, I think that throughout the history of the world, people have tended to be more religious. And so that's the thing. Andrew's not making the argument that the state owns you. Andrew's making the argument that God owns you.
Yep.
And that's why you can't fuck your sister, you know? So yeah,
fair enough.
You know, and that's like, I think that's what Dave is like, part of what Dave was struggling with. It's like it's almost like he thought that Andrew was arguing that the state owns you. And I don't think that's what Andrew was arguing.
Yeah. It wasn't really even clear to me what Andrew was arguing. It seemed to me like he was just trying to get Dave to put words and logic to express this libertarian idea. Like, how do you justify this claim you're making that you own yourself? And it was really just that, you know, it wasn't how Andrew would answer the question. It was how Dave would answer the question. And Dave, to be fair, wasn't really answering the question. And so Dave says, what would it mean to demonstrate it? So he's very honestly confused about what he thinks to be a self-apparent, obvious truism that you own yourself. It's like, how would I demonstrate that? Okay. He says that I can control myself. He says, can you give me an example? He's asking.
Yeah.
And he says, what demonstrated that people own other people in that slavery context that Andrew was talking about? He said, prove it to me. Like, he tries to flip it on Andrew's, like, you know, if you're saying that in a situation where the social agreement is that slavery is fine, you can own other people, like, but can you? And if you can, how do you prove that to me? If a slave owns somebody, do they really? And how do you demonstrate that?
Slaves don't own people. The masters.
Yeah. Excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, so Dave, I think that Dave, again, was just kind of like not understanding Andrew's argument. You know, I think that he thought he was understanding I keep mixing their fucking names up. Dave thought he was understanding Andrew's argument, but he was like, that's why I said I don't think he was doing it intentionally. I think he was trying to engage with Andrew's argument. He just didn't understand Andrew's argument.
Yeah. Do you think
so? Like, if you think you own yourself, how do you prove that to me?
And Dave's answer seems to be, because I control my will, because my will controls my being. And so I mean, what more could you ask for? Like, it doesn't even seem to merit an explanation to Dave.
Yeah. I don't think that is an obvious enough point for it to be an axiom of his philosophy, you know?
But he seems to think so.
Yeah, but that's what a debate is about.
Yeah.
It's like, you think so, but let me poke holes in your argument, you know? And at one point, you know, Andrew was like, prove to me that you own yourself. And Dave was like, you know, okay, well, prove to me that you can own another person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, we can go find contracts. We can go find slave contracts.
Yeah, but that's
proof of ownership. How do you, how can you prove to me that you own your car?
It's proof of a social contract. It's not,
which is what ownership is in Andrew's world.
Yeah, I agree that. But he says, how can that be justified? And I think we would all agree that slavery can't be justified. At least it can't be. Especially as a Christian, to say that every human being contains a spark of the divine, and their liberty that the government of the United States recognizes, individual liberty, is due to that spark of the divine.
That the United States recognizes, but America recognized slavery. You know, it's like, it is a social construct. Ownership in the sense that they are talking about is a social construct.
I don't think ownership over yourself is a social construct. Excuse me.
I think that it is.
I don't even think that's a reasonable thing to suggest.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because what you're doing is you're suggesting that somehow the will of the society supersedes your own. And there was a time when there wasn't a state society. There was a time when your immediate family was the only group.
Do you think that they didn't have slaves?
I think that I don't know why that's important, but I think that in the Stone Age they didn't have slaves. I think they absolutely didn't have slaves.
You don't? Why?
In the Stone Age, I don't think there's any evidence of it. I think people were more concerned about surviving than wielding their power over others.
I'm not completely convinced of that. I mean, obviously on like the industrial level of slavery that came later, I mean, I would agree with you, but in terms of like, were there any slaves in the Stone Age? I don't know. I'm not convinced of that.
I think when they're asking, can you demonstrate?
Was there war in the Stone Age?
Let me get this out before I forget it. Can you demonstrate self-ownership is like saying, prove to me that you love me. It's one of those questions. It's like, bitch, because I fucking said so. Of course I love you, man. How am I supposed to demonstrate that to you? What can I show you, man? It's one of those arguments. I think I don't want to say it's silly, but I think it's an impossible argument. Demonstrate that you love me. Demonstrate that you own yourself. Fuck off.
But that's the thing is I don't really believe that I own myself in this social construct. Then yes, in like the modern social construct of ownership, yeah, I guess I own myself, but I don't really believe that I own myself.
In the absence of society, do you own yourself?
No.
If there are no other human beings, do you own yourself?
Nope.
What's your argument that you belong to God?
Yes.
Well, see, you know where I'm coming from. I would say there isn't a distinction.
So I own myself.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that.
Okay. All right. Let's push through here. Okay. So he says. So Dave asks, how can you demonstrate people owned other people? And Andrew says, I'll prove it to you. I've already done it, but I'll do it again. And then Dave says, whoa, hold on. Let's try not to. We're only a few minutes into this. You just told me to prove that I own myself. And then you asserted that throughout history, people owned other people. So prove that. Now, I just want to point out here that Dave is trying to flip the script on him. And I think, that's a tactic. But you notice that I put this in red font because clearly Dave is like, whoa, hold on. Like for him, it's like, this is not going the way he thought it would go. He doesn't quite understand what's happening. He doesn't quite understand what Andrew's getting at. And I wonder if you think it's incumbent on Andrew to explain to Dave at this point where he's going. Like
I think that if Dave had not been so defensive, then it would have been easier for that to happen. But Dave, like I said, started doing all this kvetching and like, getting all indignant. So Andrew digs his heels in.
Do you think this bit is indignant where he's like, whoa, hold on. Let me just try to understand.
I think we're only a few minutes into this. Let's try not, he's like, it's like, I do. I think he's like, you're being too aggressive, but I don't think Andrew is. Andrew is being insistent, but that's not a dude. I really don't think that, I have a hard time thinking that Andrew was being too aggressive in this, you know?
Well, I've never said the word aggressive. That's come out of your mouth.
What is it then?
It is, I want to say one-sided. It's not a conversation. And I think that maybe is the heart of this whole goddamn problem, is that Dave asked for a debate when he didn't want a debate. He didn't want this. He's clearly, when he didn't want, the way this is going is not what he wanted. He's surprised by it. Yeah, he's taken aback by it.
Because he's getting handled, like I didn't like it either.
Getting handled. He can't even, he
can't even answer simple questions.
He's not able to have the conversation, a conversation. He's not able to have a conversation because he can't get beyond demonstrating self-ownership. And all he wants to do is fucking move forward.
Yeah, because he's losing that argument. Like I would want to move on from that too. It's like, this is, in his head, he's like, this is not going well. We should move on to something else. And I understand that impulse, but I understand Andrew wanting to keep it on task too, because it's crucial, like Andrew said, but semantics are important in a debate. And Dave got butthurt about that. But semantics are important in a debate.
They are important in a debate. But I do think they could have spent this entire time trying to understand what each of them means by ownership.
Mm-hmm.
Might have been a more interesting conversation, honestly. All right, moving right along. Andrew says, you and I already agreed that ownership is a social construction and that throughout history, the social construction changed. People were able to own other people due to the social construct. And Dave says, wait, I'm not even understanding what you're saying here. Right? This is another one of those things where Dave's like, what's happening here? He says, we agreed it was a social construct, and your next statement after that was to prove to me you own yourself. And Andrew says, a social construction doesn't exist in objective reality. Dave says, right. So prove to me that anyone ever owned somebody else throughout history. And this is the question is, if slavery is permitted under the society and you own a slave, prove to me that you really own it. Meaning there's something about the word own that isn't covered in your unjustified, what's the word? Unjustified control over me. You have control over me in some way, but that's not ownership, right? There's still a semantic disconnect here.
So when a Southern plantation owner had a slave and those slaves ran away, and the slave hunters got them and brought them back, how would the plantation owner justify that he owned those slaves?
Well, he would say
the society, because it's a social construct.
But yeah, exactly. But it's not to the society, meaning everyone. It's to the ruling class. It's to the majority.
No, it's to everyone.
No, it's not. It's not to all the other slaves that live where he lives. They don't agree with any of this, and they're part of the society. Yeah,
but I mean, I think that it still kind of is, because, like I said, in a practical sense, it is. I mean,
in a practical sense, it is. But that is the flaw of democracy. That is the flaw of majority rule.
Which Andrew's not defending.
Right. But what I'm saying is that there's something different about saying I own somebody, really own somebody, and saying that as a majority, and I have the power to take you, so you're mine.
Yeah.
There's something we can both agree wrong about that. You don't really own a slave.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
And so that's what Dave's trying to ask Andrew to.
But who owns the slave?
No, nobody owns the slave.
God owns the slave.
You could say that, yes.
Okay, which is, that's the Christian point of view. We're talking about Christian versus libertarian ethics.
We are.
And Dave would say that the slave owns himself, but you can't prove to me that you own yourself. So how can you prove to me that the slave owns himself?
I think Dave doesn't think that even merits an explanation. So he's saying,
that's not a great debate tactic.
I own myself because that is the nature of reality. It's like,
yeah. In Christian ethics, we would disagree with that. I don't believe that is the nature of reality. So again, how do you prove it? Like, it's like, it shouldn't even have to be proved. Well, again, that's not a convincing debate tactic.
It's like saying, prove to me you love me. I can't prove to you I love you, but I fucking love you, Kyle. I would.
Yeah, I get it.
All right. Okay. Here's another point that I wanted to make here. Can a social construct be a social construct? Right? Be a social construct, but also align with reality. So can a social construct be a social construct, but be more than a social construct? Can it be something like you can't, it's like a fact of reality. You can't argue it. And yet, but like in retrospect, society, codifies that thing into a social construct. Mm-hmm. Can it be a social construct and more than a social construct?
Yeah, I think that it can be. I think that, like Andrew, had they gone down this road more, I think that Andrew could have done a good job. Like someone like Jay Dyer would have been Andrew talked about like transcendentals and things like that.
Yeah.
And I think that is how you would get to that. It's like, yes, it can be, but I don't really know if that is a social construct in that point. I guess it is, in the sense that like society agrees upon reality. But it's also reality, so
Yeah, it's a tough one.
yeah.
That would have been an interesting conversation, but it wasn't had. Okay, in any case, Andrew says, if it's more than a social construct, the burden falls on you to prove it. And so he's continuing to come back to this, demonstrate for me you own yourself. And Dave says, well, okay, you're dodging my question. I asked you the same question you asked me, and you weren't able to answer it. By the way, part of the reason I ask is because I don't understand the question you're asking. You were asking how I can prove it's moral. Or he says, are you asking how I can prove it's moral that one person should own themselves rather than another person owning them? So here Dave is trying to say, like, I don't understand this whole thing about trying to demonstrate self-ownership. Do you mean, he says, are you really trying to ask me, is there a moral component in here about whether I should own myself or is it more or less moral for someone else to own me? He's trying to like get Andrew to be more specific. I don't know if you agree with that, but it's clear to me that what Dave is saying is he's continuing to profess his confusion. How are we? I feel like Andrew, it's incumbent upon Andrew to help Dave here, and he doesn't.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Dave agreed to a debate, and if he can't answer the questions, it's not incumbent upon Andrew to like answer the questions for him. Andrew's not arguing against himself. Andrew's arguing against Dave.
Yeah.
And if Dave is not equipped to answer Andrew's questions, that's not Andrew's fault.
But in this case, it doesn't seem like he's ill-equipped. It seems like he doesn't know what the question really is. He wants to know what Andrew is getting at so that he can try to answer what he's asking, but he doesn't understand exactly what it is Andrew's getting at. So he's asking for clarification. And for me,
he's like, Dave's like, how do I prove that I own myself?
Yes.
You can't.
Like, what would be a satisfying answer to you? Like, what would convince you, yes, that you own yourself? Like, what type of evidence would convince you?
I don't think that there is any, because I don't think that you do.
I think it's real fucking simple, man. I think my will and volition are under exclusively my control. If I say I'm going to put up two fingers, I fucking own myself. You can't do that. Only I can do that. Like, it's very fucking simple. My will is my own. And that to me is what self-ownership means. I don't know if Dave would agree. I don't know if what Andrew would have to say about it, but it just seems like self-evident in the way Dave seems to think it is.
Yeah, I don't think that saying that because you control something means that you own it.
Exclusively. Because my will.
Even exclusively. Because again, Andrew's not arguing that another person can own you or that the state owns you. That's not his position. So what can Dave say to convince Andrew that he is not owned by God? I don't think that he could, I really don't think that he would have to come up with a really good argument, and that's on him to make that argument.
So I wonder what Andrew would say, maybe even what you would say about this idea. Do you think that God gives ownership of us to us?
I think God gives us free will.
And what's the difference between free will and self-ownership?
I own my dog, and I let my dog wander about the house. I let him up on the couch. I'm not one of those people who doesn't let him up on the couch, but I own him. And if I decide that he can't be on the couch, he can't, but he has, he more or less has free will to do what he wants.
Do you think your dog thinks you own it?
That's a hard.
It is hard, but
he's a dog. I don't think that he thinks in high concepts like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know how to answer that.
I don't either, but
yeah.
Okay. All right. Andrew says, no, that's not the question. Let me explain it to you. Now here, I just want to, for a second, I want to say, Andrew said many, many times, let me explain it to you. I think it's condescending as shit. Especially
when you need something explained, is it condescending? Let me explain it to you.
It's how he said it. And he also said, there was another thing he kept saying.
Tone policing.
Calm down. That's another thing he kept saying.
Andrew says that a lot.
Jesus Christ. Try saying that to your wife, Andrew. Calm down.
I don't think that
in the heat of an argument.
I think that if Andrew told his wife to calm down, it's like, I know Andrew and Rachel pretty well. I mean, not like personally, but I've watched a lot of their content and I'm like friendly enough with both of them. It might irritate Rachel, but they believe in patriarchy. Andrew's the boss.
Yeah, for sure.
So
do you think saying calm down and let me explain it to you repeatedly in a debate is condescending and besmirching and disrespectful?
I didn't really think it was, no. Okay. Because I think that Dave didn't understand. So Andrew was like, okay, let me explain it to you.
Right. Dave didn't think he didn't understand. He thought he understood. Well, maybe not.
No, I think that he legitimately didn't understand.
Yeah, there were instances of that. I do think it came across to me as unnecessary and hostile when he said that. Calm down and let me explain it to you.
So having watched a lot of Andrew's content, especially on whatever, which, you know, Andrew's my fucking guy. He's a great guy and he's like really good at what he does, but it's fucking tedious for me to watch a lot of the whatever podcasts.
Yeah.
Which is why I was super happy to see him talk to Dave. But he does that a lot with with
women.
Yeah. That's like they get worked up.
They get worked up.
And he's like, calm down, lady. He says that so frequently. And it makes me happy every time he does.
You know what I used to say to my ex-wife, and I fucking said it because I knew it got under her skin, is rather than like being mean when she was saying something bitchy, because you remember she just
she said a lot of bitchy things.
I would just be like, you're being silly. That's silly. Yeah. That's silly. That's what I would say to her. Fuck. It was like fire and brimstone when I said that. Like, that's silly. All right. Okay. All right. Let me explain it to you, Andrew says. And Dave says, in a sense, I agree with you. And he agrees with him on the social construction of ownership. So again, Dave seems to be throwing a bone here. Yeah. In a sense, I agree with you. And Andrew interrupts him. Then you don't own yourself, he says. And Dave says, okay, let me just finish what I'm saying. I mean, dude, we've got a long show here. So let's let each other talk. Yes, you can take possession of something. I don't think anyone is arguing that. Someone can take possession of something, and that could be codified into law and society. What I'm talking about is something different, which is justified ownership over something. Then the claim is whether it's morally right that you own this or not. Fair enough. So he's asking, fair enough. Now this is the point where he's saying, yes, you could say in slavery times that somebody owns someone. They've taken possession of somebody, but that doesn't mean that they really own that person. Let's get to the bottom of what you mean by own. And Andrew says, yeah, I'm just looking for a demonstration of what's morally right. And Dave says, the demonstration would be what? That this is what you believe, that this is what seems to be right and wrong, that this is what has been accepted. And Andrew says, no, my demonstration would be divine command, not seemings. Mm-hmm. Dave says, how do you demonstrate if anything is right or wrong? Andrew says, I do it from divine command. You do it from preference, which is an interesting point, right? It's like what Dave's saying is, as a libertarian, if something is a degenerate behavior, he's saying it shouldn't be done because he thinks it's gross or he thinks it's not productive. Mm. And Andrew's saying it shouldn't be done because fucking God said so.
Yep.
Right. And that has a lot of weight for some people, and for other people, it has no weight, right? The people who don't accept God or religion at all.
Yeah. Because of their preference.
You could make that argument, I suppose.
What other argument could you make?
What do you mean?
The argument of divine command or Christian ethics doesn't hold weight for them because
they don't believe in God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's their preference to not.
Yeah. I suppose you could say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not a bad argument that Andrew's making. This is something that they could have spoken a lot about.
Yeah.
But I don't think they did.
Yeah, I think that they did kind of. I mean, especially, like I said, the clip that I want to play, it's like, I think that it's weird because it's right at the peak of them being, heated with each other. And then it kind of comes down and there's like a specific moment where it does. That's not to say that it doesn't continue being contentious because it is a debate.
Yeah.
But I think that Andrew starts doing a better job of explaining, and Dave starts doing a better job of understanding.
Yeah.
And I think that they're like working together a little bit better, still being contentious. Like I said, the contentious stays straight up to the end of up until the closing statements.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to getting to that because we're going to get to that. Okay. So then Andrew explains what he means by divine command, and or Dave asks him to explain, and Andrew says, God speaks directly into my head, and he's being a little bit.
So this, I think, kind of is Andrew throwing Dave a little bit of a bone. It's like, it's just him. He speaks directly into my head.
Yeah. Okay. I can see that.
Is not what Andrew believes.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that as being a bit of a throwing him a bone. But it's
like, you need to understand this. Then I'll just understand it this way. He beams it right into my head.
Yeah. And I also put here conscience as a bold comment, which just means that God speaking directly into your head is kind of what it could be understood that way. What we mean by conscience. When I feel bad about something, when I think I shouldn't act in a certain way, I have this bad feeling. That's my conscience. And I think it's a fair thing to say that's something like the morality of God just shining, from within you somehow. That's rubbing against your worse instincts.
Yeah.
Dave says, it sounds very good when you attack someone saying, well, that's subjective. Because he's talking about Dave only having a preference.
Yeah.
But when your response is that God communicates directly into my brain, that would be subjective. And Andrew says, that means my preference is no better than your preference. Right?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting point, right? Dave says, hold on. I don't think I'm making subjective based morality, but you accuse me of that. So my response to you is, so what is your objective base? And your response is, God speaks directly into my head. By your own standards, we're even. Okay, Andrew interrupts him, and Dave says, I want to try. Let's try if we can, because we're only a few minutes into this. This got more contentious than I thought it would in the first few minutes, because I want to have a good conversation with you. And I've been told by people I love and trust that you are a guy to have a good conversation with. So this is one of those moments where I'm thinking to myself, he's putting it all out there. He's saying, look, this is not going the way I want. I want to understand you. I want to have a constructive conversation that benefits the people that are listening. I want to understand you. I want you to understand me. And we're not seeming to do that.
Yeah.
What do you, I mean, at this point, what do you think? You think Dave is unfair in feeling?
I'm just trying to see like how much more you have of this, because if there's anything else that's no, go back up.
Yeah, we're almost there.
I didn't mean like how much more. I meant in this specific part.
Yeah.
You keep evading every question, and he's like, "Oh, all right. I don't think I have."
Yep.
Yeah. So I do think that they're kind of like starting to get to the crux of what Andrew's actual argument is here.
Yep.
And it does kind of fall into place for Dave. Especially in the clip that I want to play,
okay,
which we're getting towards it.
Yeah.
So I think, Dave is saying your divine command is subjective too. And he's thinking that he's like rebutting Andrew's point, but he's making Andrew's point. He doesn't realize that he is, but he's 100% making Andrew's point. Andrew is saying, you have subjective morality, and you say that I have subjective morality.
Yep.
So why should I take your preferences seriously? And why should you, think about it? Why should you take your preferences seriously? Why? You're just basing your morality on what makes you feel weird.
Yep.
You're basing how we should structure society on what you think is gross.
Yeah.
And I do think that Dave starts to kind of grasp that a little bit, maybe just a little bit after this.
Yep.
And Dave, one quote that you don't have is, Dave says, by your own standard, you haven't won anything. And Andrew says, it's not here to win. It's here to demonstrate that you have subjective morality. And you can believe that I have subjective morality.
Yeah.
But if you were to do an internal critique of Andrew's morality, I think that even if you don't agree with it, I think that it's more solid and based on more and like logically stacks on top of each other more than Dave's.
So I think Dave thinks that the point Andrew's making makes them even. I think he agrees. He's conceding. He's agreeing with Andrew about the subjective nature on both sides. But he says that makes us even. It doesn't make you ahead of me. It makes us even.
But go ahead.
No,
he finished.
So the point that you're making about Andrew being on more solid ground, I think Dave is intimately understands his preferences. Maybe he doesn't understand them, but he knows them. He knows when he's grossed out. He knows when something doesn't feel right. He knows those things.
He does, yeah.
He knows those things.
Yep.
In Andrew's situation, it's somebody else who's told him what's gross and what's wrong.
But that's the thing is Dave admits that he believes morality comes from God.
Yes.
So that's the argument. That's the entire argument.
That morality comes from God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think like through libertarian ethics, Dave, which he said several times in this, like, yeah, if a brother and sister he says this specifically, it's like Andrew says, if a brother and sister are banging, do you think that the government should stop them? And Dave says, not only do I think the government should, I think that anybody who has power should stop that from happening.
Yep.
Okay. So that's the argument. Let's close up shop. Because you don't like that violates Dave's libertarian ethics at the purest form of libertarian ethics. Yep. If the brother and sister own themselves, why can't they do that? I
think Dave makes a distinction several times between thinking something is right or wrong or should be allowed, and and limiting what the government should do about it.
Yeah, that's a misunderstanding that Dave keeps having, and Andrew. That's another one of those areas where Andrew is like being insistent that Dave answer the question that he's being asked instead of changing the subject.
Yeah.
Dave says on a couple occasions, but you have to understand that there's two separate questions here. And Andrew is like, yes, I understand that there are two separate questions here, but can you answer my question? Like we can get to your question, but this is the question I asked you. So can you answer that? And Dave just kept not doing it.
No, I think you're right. I think he could have done more to try to demonstrate self-ownership.
Yeah, I'm not sure that he could.
He could have tried.
Yeah,
I don't think he really did try.
Yeah. Well, I think that he could have tried, but he wouldn't have been able to.
So even if you agree,
because you even said, how do I prove to you that I own myself?
Yeah.
How do I prove to you that I love you?
Yeah.
So whatever argument that Dave makes, he can't prove it. So why should Andrew take it seriously?
Well, even if Dave agrees with Andrew about morality coming from God, which I think he does, and I think he did pretty early on.
Right about where we're talking about.
Yeah. So even if he agrees with that, morality comes from God, the question still is a political question. So, okay, well then what does society do about it? Mm-hmm. What is right? What is the role of society or government in this process? Andrew thinks that the state should be used to enforce Christian ethics.
And so does Dave.
Yeah, I guess he does. And
that's my point. Is he like Dave? I don't want to like insult Dave's intelligence and say that he doesn't realize he did, because Dave's a smart guy. And if he's being honest, I'm sure he does realize that that's a contradiction. If like Andrew says, if your brother is going to kill himself, do you think that the government should stop them? And Dave's like, yes. Okay. Yeah. So if he owns himself, why?
So answer me this, if you can. I put you on the spot here. Is there a difference? What is the difference between Jesus saying, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, mm-hmm. and libertarians saying, do what you will, so long as you're not harming others?
Because harm is subjective.
When Jesus says, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, that seems kind of subjective as well, isn't it?
Not when you're living with Christian ethics. If you're like trying your best to, and people are going to sin. It's, we're not perfect, but if you are trying to live your life according to Christian ethics, I like, if you have a brother and he's, completely addicted to porn or something like that, if you are completely addicted to porn to where it's crippling your life, do you want people to just be like, do what you want, man? You're not hurting anyone else.
No.
Do you think that that's appropriate?
I don't think that's love. I don't think that's love.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's a good point. All right. So let me just push through because we're almost done. All right. So Andrew says, he interrupts him and he says, but you keep evading the question, every question I have for you. And Dave says, oh, all right. I don't think I have. Ask me a direct question. I'm happy to answer it. And Andrew says, should the state come in and stop your brother from unaliving himself or not? And Dave says, I would want them to. Right. So this is what you just demonstrated. Now, then they start talking about incest examples and it gets a little weird. And Dave says, okay, this is also the point you made. There are two questions. One is, could I justify someone using force to stop them from doing degenerate behavior? Then there's, can I justify why it's wrong? You get why these are two different things. And this is another thing that I thought was harsh by Andrew. He says, yeah, sure. Now you answer the question. Like he was dismissive. Yeah, sure. Now answer the question.
Yeah, but I think, I don't know if you've got it here, but I think, could you not equally say that it's dismissive and insulting of Dave to be like, well, I don't think you really do understand? Because he did. He was like, Andrew said, yeah, sure. Now, can you answer my question? That's like, yes, I do. It's a pretty simple concept that it's pretty simple to understand that these are two separate concepts. They're two separate questions.
Yeah.
But can you answer my question? Because you're not. You keep avoiding it.
We're still on self-ownership, by the way.
Yeah.
And all right, then he says, dude, listen, man, do you want to have a decent back and forth here? Do you want or not? And Andrew says, you're still not answering the question. Can you justify why it's wrong for
he wasn't answering
for two consenting adults? And then now Dave interrupts him and he says, you see, the thing is, I'm answering the question. You're just kind of being a dick, trying to win the debate rather than having the conversation. And this is the point right here. Rather than having you want to win the debate rather than having the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is the problem, Dave. This is the problem from the very beginning. You didn't want to have a debate. He didn't want a debate. He wanted a conversation.
Then why did he agree to a debate?
I don't know. I think
saying that he wanted to have a conversation. Andrew, I know this because I followed Andrew pretty closely on X. Andrew said, come on the show. We don't have to have a debate. We can have a conversation. And Dave said, we can do whatever you want.
Yep.
So it's on Dave, man.
It's on Dave, but he definitely should have chosen conversation, I think.
Yeah, when you come at the king, you best not miss, man.
So Dave calls him, he says, I think you're kind of being a dick trying to win the debate. And Andrew interrupts him and says, why don't you answer the question, Dave? So, he goes right back to it. And Dave says, does that actually does anyone listening to this think this makes for good debate tactics?
I do.
You actually are not recognizing that there's a difference between these two things. So, and Andrew says, I just told you I do. And Dave says, all right, do you guys want to do this, man? I fucking honestly, dude, do you want to do a show? I mean, what's the point of this? And Andrew says, I asked you specifically if you want a conversation or a debate, and you said debate. And Dave says, the debate doesn't mean you talk over me every time I try to answer your question. You're trying to win before you actually listen to what I'm saying. Now, do you think that there's any truth in that? That Andrew is more concerned about winning than listening, than trying to understand Dave?
I think that Andrew's a competitive guy.
Yeah. And it's kind of the point of a debate, it seems like.
Yeah. But that is not, I don't think, the motivating factor for Andrew. I think the motivating factor is answer my question. Stop avoiding my question. And again, I'm not saying that Dave is intentionally avoiding. I think that it's, some kind of cognitive dissonance that he's got these ideas, and I think that he is being much more defensive of his ideas than I really do think a lot of this conflict came from Dave's side of it, even though he was being, I don't know. I'm trying to find a word without being a dick, but he's whining and complaining about Andrew, being insistent that Dave answer his question. And I just don't think that that's wrong. It's he was asking you this question, and you keep wanting to make it about, well, what should we do about that? And, how do we enforce these things?
Yeah.
But that is entirely to Andrew's point. It's what do we do about these things? Well, under your worldview, we can't do anything about them.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. And it's a good goddamn point. What do you think would have happened if Dave would have just said, that's not something that can be demonstrated? Or I can't demonstrate it. Like if he would have said that.
I think that's a bad look in a debate where you're trying to defend an idea, you know? But I don't necessarily think that it's wrong, to be honest with you. I think that maybe it is hard to demonstrate that. So we're going to pull up this debate here.
Wait, we want that one or do we want to?
That's the only one.
Oh, okay. There we go.
All right, make sure it's up. Okay, it is. All right.
Do we need to make a full screen or does it matter?
We will.
Okay. Do you get why those are two different things, though? You get the point I'm making.
Yeah, sure. So can you answer the question now?
Yeah, dude. Listen, man, do you want to like have a decent back and forth here or like, do you want to not?
You're still not answering the question.
Okay.
Can you justify why it's actually wrong for two consenting adults?
Yeah. See, the thing is, I am answering the question. You're just kind of being a dick
Well,
and trying to win the debate.
When are you
rather than
going to
having a
answer the
conversation.
question, Dave?
See,
All right, give him a chance.
so is that actually like? Does anyone listening to this think this makes for
So
like
you
good debate?
Brought up
tactics?
right to where we
No,
just
you actually
Weird, isn't it?
are not like recognizing that there's a difference between these two things. So
I just told you I do.
Let's leave him.
All right,
finish.
do you guys
Let's
want to
leave
do
Dave
this,
answer.
man? I fucking like honestly, dude. This is
You've
just like,
talked.
if
We've
this-
talked way more than I have, Dave. I just want you to answer my question. Can you justify it or not, bro?
Okay. So anyway, I'll go back to saying, do you guys want to do this? Do you guys want to like do a show here or like what's the point of this?
You want
Right, right.
to?
You
I
can
asked
say
you specifically if you
right,
wanted a
right.
conversation
You
or a
could say-
debate.
you
You
could
said a
say-
debate. We're debating.
No. I didn't say that. I said
did say
we
that.
could do whatever you want to do, dude.
Yeah. So we're doing a debate. So let's not do a meta
Yeah, but a
conversation.
debate
Just
doesn't
answer the
mean-
question.
A debate doesn't
Okay.
mean you talk over me every time I try to
Right.
answer.
I
the
here's
question.
just
what
want
we're
you to
gonna do.
answer the
Here's-
question.
here's what
No,
we're gonna
I
do.
understand
Let's
you do,
leave-
and I was, but you're
Dave,
just
1 second.
kinda-
Here's what we're
Sure.
gonna do. Dave can expound here on what he thinks is occurring here in this.
Rob
debate.
Noor did
And
a
then
really
before
good
you
job
come back
moderating
in,
the
Andrew, we'll
debate.
give Dave a chance
Yep.
to
Okay.
specifically answer the question
Gotta
that
get
you
my
asked.
mod-
So Dave's
my
going to
mod-
do two
So
things here.
just
He's going to
ask me the question again. I'm sorry.
Can you justify why two consenting adults who are brother and sister having sex is morally wrong?
Yes.
Then do it.
Okay, because I think it's for the same reason you would think. I think it's against nature. It's evil. It just seems horrible. I don't know. Do you have a better answer for why it's wrong?
Well, yes, divine command.
Divine command. Okay, fine. So I also say divine command. That's why it's wrong.
Well, but
There
then this
you go.
axiom, then the axiom of self-ownership would be wrong.
No,
How did
it
he-
wouldn't. No,
well,
it wouldn't. And if you had listened to me when I was
That's so
responding
weird,
the first
though.
time, you would understand.
Well, here,
that.
let me now make my argument back.
Yeah,
if they
right,
don't,
right.
if they don't
See,
own
that
them,
right there.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, what? Andrew's not allowed to make his argument back? Like you're like disengaging. And I texted someone else when I was watching this, and I was like, I think Dave's gonna quit. I think Dave's gonna rage quit right now.
I thought it was too for a minute.
Yeah. And I'm glad that he didn't because it became more productive. But yeah, we'll get back into it here.
themselves, right? Or if they do own
Mhm.
themselves, rather, and they're two consenting adults, just like two homosexuals consenting adults. Why is it actually wrong for them to do that? You say because it seems like it's against nature, which isn't the natural fallacy. Couldn't I just apply that to homosexuals as well and say, well, it seems like it's against nature?
Yeah, sure. Maybe you could.
And do you think so? Your moral oughts are based around just things that gross you out?
No, divine intervention, bro.
Divine command?
Yeah, there you go.
So if it's divine command, then you're going to abandon libertarianism and you're going
No.
to come over to Christian ethics, right?
No.
No. But I thought you made your justification based on.
I do think that there's an interesting conversation that could have been had here about what I just tried to bring up to you is when Jesus says do unto others, how close or how different that is from a libertarian argument. I think that could have been an interesting conversation.
Do you think that Jesus was saying that brothers and sisters should be able to have sex with each other if that's what they want to do?
No, but
Okay.
but what I'm saying is when Jesus says do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, that maybe primarily that means don't harm others. And that's what the libertarian philosophy is.
Is it harm to prevent it's like the porn thing that we were talking about earlier. It's like, if you're doing something depraved and terrible, is it harm to prevent you from doing that?
No.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't understand what, what's the point?
Well, see, Dave is conceding that he wants intervention.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're really not very far off from each other. I think Dave was being a little bit condescending in agreeing the way that he did. Yeah, I guess it's divine intervention.
Yeah, because he didn't understand what point Andrew's getting to. And instead of, and I guess I understand because, if Dave is just like sitting there listening to Andrew, he runs the risk of doing like I said, what happened with me in that debate with the guy that looks like someone hit him in the head with a brick.
Lord, I apologize.
But yeah, so I guess I understand why Dave didn't want that to happen, but he did that at the expense of making arguments that were not about what Andrew was trying to say. So
yeah, sure.
Right. We got 7 more minutes, so not too much.
On divine command.
So, okay, listen, it's clear that
Great
Dave,
point, dude. You're right. You have divine command, and you're asking me why it's wrong for a brother to fuck a sister. Listen, dude, I know, I don't know anything about you. I don't know why Jacob thought this was.
You got divine command, and you're asking me about why it's wrong for a brother to fuck a sister. But does Dave not see that is? Dave said that he thinks that anybody who has the power to should prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
He said that.
He did.
No arguing against the fact that he said that. So why, Dave? Why do you want somebody who has power to prevent these people from doing that?
I have a gross question to ask you.
Oh, God. All right.
While we're talking about incest, one of the things that Andrew does in this debate is he says, let's assume that the woman is not fertile or something like that, so that we're not complicating the debate by suggesting that the incest is going to bring a retarded baby into the world and it's going to have all kinds of problems that come along with that. Let's not do that. Let's just say these people are having sex and it's just sex. My question is, if that's the case, what is wrong with it? What is wrong with it? And how do you, and we could get biblical here, and we could talk about Adam and Eve. We could talk about the sons of Adam, the sons and daughters of Adam and Eve, populated. We could do that if we want, but we don't have to do that. We could just say, what is wrong with that? Because the libertarian argument is you're not harming anybody. You're just getting your jollies off with your sister. As gross as that is, what is wrong with that?
Within Christian ethics, what is wrong with homosexuality? What is wrong with, honestly, why is murder wrong?
Do you think it's the case that those sorts of prohibitions make their way into the Bible because of the consequences? Meaning that if incest happens too much, then you end up having people, the next generation, that cannot function. And so it becomes a prohibition.
And like homosexuality, you get disease and things like that.
Or you just don't carry on.
You die out as a species. No, I don't think that. I think that those consequences, I don't think that that's how the causality works. I think that you get the consequences because it's wrong.
Yeah. I'm okay with that.
And so I asked you why is incest wrong? Why is homosexuality wrong? Why is murder wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Because God said so.
Yep.
That's what it boils down to. Now, maybe there's like some, we can build ethics on top of that. We can flesh that out, but that's why it's wrong.
Well, I think a question could be asked and not answered, but it could be asked because God said so. But why did he say so? There must be a reason. Is that reason, those practical reasons that we just talked about, that if you're only having gay sex, then humanity dies out?
I mean, I think that, God is God, and if God wanted it to be, so that's interesting. You said we could get biblical, and if Adam and Eve are the only people, and then there's only 2 sons. Like, first of all, who were Cain and Abel? Well, I guess just Seth eventually.
Yeah.
Who were they having sex with? So I don't think that all the questions are answered. You have to take some things on faith.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting that like maybe God can like make it, he's like, okay, because we need to propagate the species, it's not wrong right now.
Yeah.
But as soon as it's like, honestly, like I said earlier, if Andrew said calm down to Rachel, Andrew's the boss.
She would calm down.
Or
she would calm right down.
Well, maybe internally she wouldn't.
Yeah.
Maybe she would be mad about it, but they both subscribe to a patriarchal system, so she has to calm down. And because Andrew's the boss and the husband is the boss, and that is, the wife looks to the husband as humans in general look to God. So whatever God says is right and wrong, that's what's right and wrong.
Yeah.
That's, that's that's like the crux of Christian ethics,
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. Okay. Moving right along.
All right.
This is going to be a good idea. I know you like dominate 20-year-old like OnlyFans sluts in debates.
I also dominate 45-year-old comedians in debates. What's your point?
41, motherfucker. And
that was it. That moment, I think, is kind of where I'd like to point out that you think that Andrew's been aggressive or whatever. You didn't say aggressive, but I think that, like I said,
not respectful. I would say that.
I think that most of the contentiousness has come from Dave because he's avoiding.
I think that his contentiousness, he sees it as provoked. And I know that because when I watch it, I feel, if I were him, I would feel provoked.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, you feel how you feel. Mm-hmm. But Andrew didn't insult anyone. Andrew also wasn't like getting flustered and be like, what are we even doing here?
Yeah.
That was all Dave.
He does at the end, at the very end, when they're talking about conscription. There's a moment where Andrew's like stumbling all over himself.
Yeah, I remember that part, but I don't think it was anywhere near. I mean, I don't think that Andrew was anywhere near quitting.
No.
Yeah,
no.
And I mean, we both said that we
Dave,
both felt
I thought
like
so.
Dave was
Yeah, I thought so.
So, yeah, I mean, I definitely think that Dave got to a point where he was making some points that were a little bit harder for Andrew to contend with. But I do think that Andrew, in the long run, contended with them decently.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you to some extent. But Andrew didn't insult Dave, and Dave was the first one to throw out an insult here. I mean, he called him a dick earlier.
He did.
But
he did it in the nicest possible way. He said,
guess.
I think you're kind of being a dick and trying to win a debate. That's what he said.
Yeah. Okay. But Andrew didn't say anything like that. Andrew didn't say you're being a bitch. You're avoiding my question. I mean, he said you're avoiding my questions, but he was just stating facts at that point.
Yeah.
And then Dave here says, look, I know you dominate OnlyFans sluts, which is like,
So he does know about Andrew a little bit, right?
That's exactly. Yeah.
That's a good point.
But that was like, that was Dave being aggressive. That was Dave bringing the aggression. I think more blatant aggression than Andrew brought the entire debate.
I see your point. And I can understand why some people would see it that way, but I can also see people seeing Dave being provoked to this building
by
and building
being asked
and building
questions.
By
insisting that you answer the questions.
By feeling like Andrew is intentionally not engaging with what he wants to talk about.
But Dave is intentionally not engaging with what Andrew wants to talk about.
Well, yes, but one question. It's one question the whole time.
Yeah, that makes it even worse. It's like you can't answer one question.
Which is why I wish Dave, I said earlier, I wish Dave would have said, well, that's the kind of thing that can't be demonstrated. Let's move on.
Yeah.
But
so I do think Dave was being more blatantly combative than Andrew ever was in this entire debate. Yeah. And I think that Andrew being like, yeah, I also dominate 45-year-old comedians. I think that was like kind of like because Dave's a comedian and Dave's a shit talker. And I think that instant there was like a little bit of like, oh, okay.
Camaraderie.
Yeah.
Well, you can see it right now. Look at this
Yeah,
picture.
exactly.
Look
Yeah.
at Dave's smile and look at Andrew's smirk.
Andrew's like, wry smirk.
Yeah,
Exactly. So I really do. I think this is kind of where the tide turned a little bit.
Yeah.
Again, not saying it's not contentious.
Look at the commentator. Look at
Rob,
the
he's cracking up, man.
All right, keep going.
And no, you're really not, though. You're asking questions about why it's wrong for a brother to fuck a sister. Oh, okay. I don't know. Because I think it's wrong and yes, awful. And also, do I think that the government, if we're talking about adults, is it being outlawed going to be a great way to regulate that? Probably not.
Disagree.
What you think if there's a law against incest, people aren't going to do it?
He said earlier that he wants them to prevent it.
Yeah, he did.
So,
but he just said that making it a law is not the best way of
how else do you
enforcing.
do it?
Well,
And even if you do it through like some kind of cultural, making it taboo, we did do. That's it is,
Yeah.
But then but that's again, that is the crux of Andrew's argument. Even if we do it societally and culturally, why do we have the right to do that, Dave?
Yeah.
Why can we tell these people through cultural means that fucking your sister is wrong?
Yep.
And that is the question that Dave continually did not answer. But I mean, he did. And when he did answer it, he's like, yeah, you know what, Andrew? I guess I agree with you.
Yep.
So what the fuck was this all about? And Dave said that to Andrew. It's like, well, what have we been doing here the whole time? Yeah, it's like, yeah, but that's on you, Dave. You're the one who is not, you're completely missing Andrew's point because you don't want to have your worldview destroyed.
See, I posit that had Andrew had a different tact in the conversation, it could have gone very differently.
Yeah.
So I still want to lay it more on Andrew only because our personalities are very different.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have done it that way.
Yeah.
And I'm completely transparent about that.
Yeah.
It's not wrong what he's doing. And the points you're making in support of Andrew are perfectly fine. I'm not disagreeing with it. I just would have done it differently.
I think that Andrew's going to have to change his tactics in the future because he's too good. And I don't think people are going to want to debate with him. I think if he's like, yeah, we have to have a debate, people are going to be like, and this is something that I've heard Jim Bob from Made by Jim Bob say before. It's like, people are going to be like, this guy's going to destroy me. No, I don't want to debate you.
Yeah.
So through necessity, I think Andrew's going to have to, shift his tactics a little bit in the future. So you might end up liking his tactics a little bit.
Listen, I think I need to listen to more of the conversations and not less of the debates. And I haven't sought them out. So that's something I'll need to do.
Yeah, man. All right, let's get back to this.
Yeah. What even is your vision? I mean, this is like the dumbest fucking question to get into what the role of government ought to be. Yes, you're right. If the FBI is breaking in and stuff.
That's the thing, though. That's not the question. That's not the conversation that Andrew was having. That's the conversation that Dave wanted to have.
Yes.
But that's not what Andrew was asking him.
Yep.
And it's not wrong of Andrew to insist that his questions are answered. It's like, how is that even the best way to talk about what the role of the state is? But to have the conversation about what the role of the state is, you have to ask yourself, what is it moral and immoral for the state or other people to do? Which is what Andrew was trying to get at. And how do you come to that conclusion? Which again, Dave agrees with Andrew on. So I just don't understand. Dave was being defensive of his worldview this whole time, and it was like causing him to not engage. That's my assessment of it.
Stopping 25-year-old and 28-year-old brothers and sisters from having sex with each other. That's okay. We
but
need
they
the
do
government
that.
to do
Just
that.
so you know, they do that right now. Are you opposed to it? They actually arrest people for doing this, and they drag them off to jail, and they put them in jail for doing that.
I'm not nearly as aware of this as you are, Andrew, but I'm not going to fight.
There's another sly little insult there from Dave. It's like,
was.
maybe you fuck your sister, Andrew, which I think is the implication there. Maybe you're some kind of backwards redneck that thinks that, that your family has sex with each other, but my family, my New York family, we don't do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
No. Yeah, I can see your point there. Again, I would just say, I think Dave feels justified in throwing those stones because he feels like he's been having them thrown at him this whole time.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I just think that's what he thinks.
Yeah.
Against that law.
Yeah, but here's the thing then. What I don't understand is that if the argument for self-ownership is that consenting adults can do whatever it is they want to do. Because they're consenting adults are not hurting anybody else. This would be a violation of the non-aggression principle. Why couldn't a brother and a sister engage in this in Dave's libertarian land? Why couldn't they? Why shouldn't they be able to? Honestly.
Sure. Well, why shouldn't they do it is for moral reasons. I suppose you could make an argument that if people really do have freedom, then a grown, grown adults who are related should not be banned by law and should not have a cop bash him over the head with a baton for like having sex with a cousin or something. Okay, but you're taking this to like this weird extreme example where
that happens now.
Oh, sure. Okay. Anyway,
see right there, Andrew was, I'm sorry, Dave was like, you're taking it to this weird extreme example. And Andrew, all he's saying is it's not extreme because it happens now. It's not that extreme because it's the world we live in right now. And Andrew's like, or I'm sorry, Dave is like, yeah, okay. It's like I don't think the fact that Andrew just said something that is completely true, like registered with Dave because he's in defense mode. He's in, I need to defend my worldview that is getting destroyed.
So I'm in a weird place here on this because it is a weird topic, but I'm in a weird place in between.
It's weird intentionally.
Yep.
Go ahead.
In between Andrew and Dave here, because as gross as I agree that it is, and I wouldn't condone it under any circumstances. If he's saying a 26-year-old guy fucks his 28-year-old cousin.
No, not cousin, brother,
well,
sister.
He specifically said cousin. Dave just did a minute ago.
Oh, did he? Okay.
But it's assuming they did that. I think that as a Christian, you could say that you've sinned and that you have something to atone for. And that if you don't, you're going to suffer hell. And I think that's fair for a Christian to say. But I also...
Is that not God violating the non-aggression principle?
Oh, I don't think God is not subject to the non-aggression principle. So I think that's fine. But Dave's point is, should it be illegal? And I kind of can't find myself out of that conundrum. I think in that example, I mean, we could talk about others, but in that example, I don't think that it should be illegal. I don't think the state should punish them for that. That's not to say that they shouldn't have social consequences or religious consequences or spiritual consequences. And I think, every Christian would agree with that. Your sin is a sin against God. Your judge is God, not the fucking court, right? I don't know why you should be punished by the civil authorities for incest.
So what about Sodom and Gomorrah?
What about it?
A whole bunch of terrible things were happening.
Yep.
And God, was having a conversation with Abraham. And he's like, there's 10 good people there.
Mm-hmm.
I won't destroy the place.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So would it not have behooved Sodom and Gomorrah to police themselves a little bit more?
Sure.
Fire and brimstone got rained down on them.
Mm-hmm.
So they probably should have maintained societally their morality a little bit better.
Yep. Yeah, I think that example is going to be lost on some people. What Kyle is saying right now, and using this example of Sodom and Gomorrah, is really what Andrew's argument has been this whole time. It's if you're constrained to this libertarian principle that anything goes so long as you don't, so long as you're not hurting somebody else, where does it stop? Where does it stop then? Right. And I guess what you're saying here is if you leave enforcement up to the final judgment, what's stopping society from falling apart now?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good goddamn question.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, when you have libertarian, these subjective morality ethics, it opens things up. It opens a can of worms that you cannot stop. So like right now we're having this conversation of why can't a brother and a sister bang it out,
Yep.
But the libertarian candidate for president makes arguments. Why shouldn't children be able to trans themselves?
Does he really?
Yeah.
Oh God.
So again, you're opening a can of worms, which is why I believe that objective morality, Christian morality in my case, is superior to these are my preferences, those are your preferences, you leave me alone, you know? So I mean, you have daughters,
Mhm.
and I mean, if we keep moving in this direction, like, what are you going to do if your daughter comes home? And, I hate making this like personal, but what any person going to do if their son or daughter comes home and they're like, I think I might be a boy or a girl, whatever the opposite of what they are is. And it's because some teacher is pushing this kind of ideology on them.
I was at the park with my kids today, and this little kid on the playground, he wasn't playing with my kids. He was just walking by, and he says something about his name. I can't remember what it was. And he says something to his friend about how it could be a boy's name or a girl's name.
Mhm.
And then I hear the boy say, it's a transgender name.
Terrible.
I'm just telling you that
Why the
because
fuck does a kid even have an inkling of what that concept is?
I have no idea, man.
And like this libertarian ethic of do what thou wilt. It's like, yeah, but I have to live in the fucking world with you. I have to send my kids to the same school that you send your kids to, and you're gonna fucking poison my children with this terrible, evil ideology. And like, why should I be okay with that?
So you would think that when you say "do what thou wilt," you're talking about LaVeyan Satanism, and you're
libertarianism.
You're making that an analogy to libertarianism. Do you believe that's a legitimate analogy?
Yes.
You don't see a difference between.
Nope.
Okay.
What's the difference?
I think the difference. I mean, what's left out of that sentence is the harm part.
Yeah.
And I'm still stuck on this. I'm gonna have to think this through.
Do you really think that LaVeyan Satanists are above this postmodern bullshit of, yeah, but what is harm, man?
Not at all.
Yeah. So I would prefer to stick with the objective morality.
Do you think that there are libertarians that are? I think there are. I think there are libertarians that
yes
that play that what's the word? Fucking the philosophical school we're just talking about.
LaVeyan Satanism?
No. Fucking postmodernism. Excuse me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Now I fucking lost my train of thought. I was thinking too hard.
Are there libertarians who engage in that?
Yeah, I think there are, but I also think there are those
good ones.
Yeah.
I mean, that dude Jacob Winograd. I think Dave. Like Dave.
Oh, for sure.
Is I think a good-hearted person who, like in the Bible, it says that God writes His law on our hearts even before we know the ins and the. That's like why you intrinsically know that murder is wrong. That's why you intrinsically know that theft is wrong. That's why I think you intrinsically know that homosexuality and banging your sister is wrong, So I think that, there are libertarians who do have like some aspect of Christian ethics, whether they realize that's what it is or not. And I just think that having that completely contradicts libertarian ethics. It's like, okay, so if you think that it's wrong and you think that we shouldn't be doing it, then what is the problem with me tweaking the knobs of society so that you're not brainwashing my daughter into thinking that she's a boy?
I never considered how close Satanism is to postmodernism until just now.
Yeah.
It's seriously there. That would be an interesting study.
Yeah. There's a meme. It's like a classical painting of Rome burning in the background. And there's like one of these like soy jack, cartoon drawing persons. And he's like pointing back at it. And he's like, yeah, but how does it affect you? It's like, well, it fucking affects me, man. If society's crumbling around because of your degen bullshit, that has an effect on me.
Yeah.
And if I want to exert some kind of force against it, I don't really think that's wrong.
Yeah. It's a fucking interesting thing, man. Because at any given time, there are people who see further than others. There are people who understand further than others. People that see the direction we're headed and that it needs to change. And then there's a lot of other people who don't. And then I don't know if it's always a minority of people, maybe it is, that are pushing back against the paradigm when they know it's poison.
Yeah.
And the only way those people can do what's right is through force. So it's a strange thing, man.
Yeah.
I just something I haven't really thought too deeply about until now, till we're talking about it.
So it's funny that that's what this is about, because a lot of my being drawn towards Christianity in the last few years and my letting go of libertarianism, I don't know if you remember this, but we've talked about it. It's how do you determine what is right and wrong? That was a huge part of it. So this debate is like a nice encapsulation of that.
Right,
well, at least the first part of it. Yeah, we got 4 minutes and 30 seconds left.
Okay,
You're taking this to a weird extreme example where, okay, let's take it to the other extreme and say, do you believe that the government should rush into your house anytime you're doing anything where they determine that that's degenerate or not moral or productive? You're smoking a cigarette right now. Is that enough of a reason for someone to come get you? Like, would there be any realm where you would say, maybe the government shouldn't be regulating every inch of what I determine from divine, whatever that is moral or immoral?
Yeah. So actually, this makes my point for me. This is great. So the reason that I just go ahead and concede a lot of these points, because there's no real reason to fight them. For instance, if you agree with me that the only justification that you can have is that, well, because God told you it's gross, and so therefore you ought to not do it, then this would mean that you agree with me in divine command and should be a Christian ethicist. That's why that's done. That's why I just make it super easy for you to go ahead and agree. And you did. You agreed. Absent. So I'm just going to ask this straight out. Okay. And no, I don't believe in that sort of government overreach. And I can give you my systems and reasons for why that is too, under Christian ethics, or Christian ethics, where we both take into account consequence, but also take into account duty. So I'm going to ask this: absent any kind of divine command, God didn't tell you anything, would you say that it's not moral? And can you justify why it's not moral for a brother to hump his sister? Could you do that absent divine command? Like, honest question, Dave. This is super important.
Sure. So I would say this, right? I grew up an atheist. Well, I mean, I'm Jewish, but I grew up like not a religious person. It was just, kind of what I was born into. And I was pretty much an atheist for most of my life. And then I had some experiences as I became a young adult that made me think about God and kind of get in touch with him. And then it was really when I had my first child that I really found God. So I would agree with you that, yes, there is something from God that instructs me as to what is right and wrong in this world.
Sure.
However, before I ever believed in God, yeah, there was just a deep feeling inside of me that would have been very wrong. And I do believe that was always from.
So I think what he's saying now is connected to those two questions that he was trying to split apart earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's basically agreeing that morality is divine. The origin of morality is divine. He can't justify it any other way.
Yeah.
But he's saying that what to do about it, what society should then do about it, is a different question.
In some ways it is, and in some ways it's not, because like what we've been talking about, like, why do I have a responsibility? Dude, the degenerate shit that people get into, it's compelling. It like gets into you and you want it, like carnal desires, So why is it incumbent upon me to allow that to happen?
Well, I guess what I see is, I wonder how Andrew would take this, but I see the logic of that Andrew's bringing here inevitably leading to a theocracy, to an Islamic caliphate, to that sort, to Christian caliphate, yeah. Right? So it's, and there's also the question of, if we stop people from sinning through force, have we stolen their opportunity for salvation? If it's not possible for you to sin, if I haven't given you the freedom to do it, are you a good person? I don't think you are. You haven't been given the chance to be a good person. Yeah. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And I mean, I think that Andrew is kind of, like, they aren't able to get super deep into it, but Dave's like, you're smoking a cigarette right now. Why can't So there are like gradients to it, you know. It's like, why, if you know the like Protestant, this is a big thing in Protestant, like, you know, Puritan kind of Christianity. It's like your body is your temple. You can't, that's why you shouldn't drink it all, even though the Bible commands us to drink wine. You know, you can't, you smoking a cigarette, that's bad. Yeah, even if it is, which I'm not convinced of. There are, like I said, there's a gradient to it.
Mhm.
You know, it's like, is it wrong? Yes, but it's not, the effects of it are not so like deleterious to society that like we need to.
Yeah.
But murder, you know, that's pretty bad. We can't just have people going around stabbing people to death, you know. And one of the great lies of the last 100 years, we'll say, is that sexual immorality and things like that are, it's no big deal, man. Let people do what they want, man. But look at how things are going.
I can't argue with that.
Yeah. So it's like, again, it's like that Rome meme. Like, how does it affect you? Well, I don't want my kids to be convinced that they're trans. That's how it affects me.
Yeah.
And if you convince my kids that they're trans, yeah, let's go. You know, the old Andrew Tate meme, Abdul, get the rocks. You know, it's like, yeah, okay. I'm not like, get the rocks, motherfucker.
Get the rocks, man.
Get the rocks.
Get the rocks.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say about that.
How does it make you feel to be the hand of God's judgment? Like you throw the rocks, right?
Yeah.
Right. Do you feel totally okay with that? Or do you feel that there's a risk there?
If you, I'm trying to think of like the most sensitive way to say this. If you diddle my kid, I'm throwing the fucking rocks. I'm standing right over top of you and I'm dropping a big heavy one on your skull.
You betcha.
And I feel fine about it.
Fine.
100% fine.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel?
I'm going to take communion immediately afterwards. I'm going to be fine.
Do you think like these cities, these liberal cities where people run in and they steal because we're not doing anything about it? Do you think that it would be bad for us to put some kind of societal resistance towards that behavior?
Not at all.
Me neither. I think it would be good, actually. I think that it's fine within my Christian ethics, and I think that it would make the world a better place.
Yeah.
So I think we should do it.
I'm in.
I'm in too.
Play.
God. So
okay.
I don't
so
know.
Then absent God.
What that proves.
So
In
then
this-
absent
there's
God.
nothing in this argument.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
that is
no,
how
it,
I feel.
it does though, and I'm
Does
going to
it?
explain how. I'm going to explain
Go
how
ahead.
because you're saying that absent God is just your preferences. It's just how you feel.
No,
that's what makes
not
what's
what I
moral
said.
or not moral.
No, but
Then
see,
what would
that's
make
not-
it immoral?
See, that's
Absent
not-
God.
See, here's the thing, dude. Andrew, I think you're doing a thing here that a lot of like inner.
Do you? I meant to say this earlier. Do you see how the tone has changed?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Now more than I did before.
Because it's hitting Dave what Andrew's talking about. You know, it's like, I think he, in his head, he's like, oh,
Okay. I see what you're doing.
Kind of like you've done.
But
right now.
I guess I wish Andrew would have been more explicit about it earlier on. Like, this is what I'm talking about. And I think he didn't because he had the upper hand in the debate. You see what I mean? If it was a conversation, maybe he would have got to the point. He would have brought Dave around,
well, it's Andrew's,
held him by the hand like a little child.
but it's Andrew's job to discredit Dave's worldview. And if you do that, if you like let Dave gish gallop and, you know, like change the subject, that doesn't happen. You know what I'm saying? So I think that Andrew being insistent that Dave answer the question is the only thing that allowed this to happen.
True.
I really don't think it would have happened had Andrew been like more friendly, you know.
It almost didn't happen because Dave almost
Dave
pulled the
almost
plug.
quit. All right, let's see.
Yeah, we got a minute left.
Internet blood sport debaters try to do, which is that you're trying to win before you're actually listening to what I'm saying.
It's a great.
I can
So it's
steel
like,
man the entire thing if you'd like.
Try to listen to what I actually said and grapple with that. What I said was not before I believed in God, it was just subjective. What I said was before I believed in God, I always had this feeling. And what I believe is that was always God.
Which is, yes, exactly, Dave. You're making Andrew's point. You're still making Andrew's point, even though you think that you're not. You know, like like I said, God's law is written on our heart. Even if you're not a Christian,
Yep.
it's you know what is right and wrong.
Yep.
Now, the fine tuning of what is right and wrong, you might not have all of those things in place, but you know it's wrong to kill someone for no reason, you know?
And you have to admit that there is overlap in the libertarian philosophy and what's written on Dave's heart. That's why for him, he accepted the philosophy.
Yeah.
Because it resonated with what he felt.
Yeah. I think I've heard people say this, that libertarianism is Christianity without Christ. They've removed the metaphysical from it.
That's interesting.
So I think that there's a lot of truth in that. And now Dave is at a point in his life where he understands that that's not enough. And people like Jacob Winograd and Kyle Matovic, even though he's not Christian, I think they understand that this libertarian, strictly materialist ethic is not enough.
Yeah. Well, Dave is of the age where I think that starts to happen to people.
Yeah.
I think,
happens to some earlier than others, but yeah.
I think maybe late 20s to early 40s is about, maybe mid 40s. That's about the time where people are really fucking grown up and
I think that there might be like a societal tweaking of the knobs to why that is happening. I think that that's happening later. I think that if you have kids in your early 20s, you probably start getting that a lot earlier.
That's very true. I assume. Yeah.
Which is, why I think that people should have kids very early. I think that there's a lot of good reasons for that to happen. But just to make sure, I think we can probably end it, but let's just make sure.
Yeah.
So
to
steel man,
point. That's a very different thing than what you said.
You get the concept of steel man.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Just for maybe anyone who doesn't, there's a fallacy called a straw man where you argue against, which is honestly kind of what Dave's been doing this entire time. You argue against an argument that your opponent is not making. It's a straw man. It's like a scarecrow. It's like a fake person that you're arguing with.
Yeah.
And a steel man is like, okay, I'm going to repeat back to you your argument the best way and in the most charitable way that I can possibly do it.
Yep.
So that's what a steel man is.
All right.
Sure. So I'll just steel man the position. The position, to make sure I don't get this wrong at all, is that you believe that there was some type of natural law given to you by God before you ever even believed in God, correct?
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
Great. So I steel man the position. So to my question, which you didn't actually answer,
Sure.
which is this: absent God, if there was no God, could you justify why this would be immoral or not?
Yeah, I don't know that you could. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that
That's
I think
boys.
Game over.
I think absent God, it's very difficult to arrive at morality.
Just end it right.
Yeah, that's good. Now the question is, could they have continued to have this conversation now that they're on the same page about morality, and start having the conversation? Okay, we agree on morality. So what is the role of the state in enforcing it?
Well, they kind of do. I mean, they kind of did get into that a little bit. Like, they were talking about taxes and when is taxation theft and when is it not?
Yeah.
And conscription.
Holy shit, we went 2.5 hours.
Yeah, dude.
Oh wow.
We instead of reading it, we probably should have just watched it like we did all of that.
Yeah, I wish I'd have known. It would have saved me a lot of time. All right.
Yeah,
man.
the Amon Hillman stuff is gonna have to wait till next week.
Yeah.
Which I'll just say, boy, it was hard for me to listen to that.
It was hard for me to listen to, but you can understand when I said I was glued, like I couldn't pull myself
I don't
away
understand.
because I'd never heard such a thing. I never.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, but we'll talk about it.
All right.
We'll definitely talk about that.
All right. So just to wrap this up, then.
Nectarios and Doomer Doxy / John might be coming on next week. Just so you know.
Next week, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, next week I'm going to be in Michigan.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll have to message them immediately and let them know.
Yeah, sorry, man. It's a
That's all right.
graduation
It is
party.
what it is.
Okay. But I may, well, let's just say we'll have to push it back a week.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, then to sum this one up, then, we kind of already did. Dave came around, obviously, to it being the case that he can't defend morality absent of God. So they're in agreement on that. I don't know that they ever really answered the question about self-ownership and all that stuff. I think that was still kind of in the weeds a little bit.
Well, I think that an entailment of Dave admitting what he admitted is that, honestly, it doesn't matter whether you own yourself or not.
Yeah.
Because it's wrong, and we agree on why it's wrong, why can't I stop you? Especially because Dave even said that he thinks that people should stop them.
Yeah, he did.
So he really he shot himself in the foot on that one.
I thought it was a good conversation. I think, and just so everyone knows, if you didn't watch it, at the end, they get a little bit more chummy.
Yeah.
It
stays contentious throughout the back and forth, but as soon as the opening or the closing statements happen, Dave is the first one to do it, and you can tell that he lightens up a bit, and then throughout the calls, they're like palling around a little bit, you know.
And Andrew more or less invited himself on Dave's podcast. So if that ever happens, I will be listening to that.
Yeah,
I would be
absolutely.
very curious to see how a conversation goes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, man.
You want to end it there?
That's fine with me.
Awesome. All right, you guys.